we know what the day gonna be like. We wait a few more minutes so you can get yourself together. We wait a few more minutes. Good evening. I would like to call the Flint Board of Education Committee of the whole to meeting to order at 6:31 p.m. Board members, as I call upon your name, please reply present for the record. Vice President McIntosh. Trustee Gibbard.
Present.
Trustee Green, absent. Assistant Secretary Treasurer Del Maroney, absent. Secretary Booth.
Present.
Treasurer McIntyre.
Present.
Myself present. 4 present, 3 absent. At this time, we will hear comments from the public. We ask that you state the reason for addressing the board and that you limit your remarks to 3 minutes on matter within the authority of the board and not to address individuals by name. The presiding officer of the board shall have the right to limit the number of persons who may address the board on the same subject. Please state your name and address first before beginning to speak. Rochelle Arnett. You can come and speak right there. Go
Good.
ahead.
Hi. Hi, my name is Rochelle Arnott. I am with the Green Bean, located at 1625 West Atherton Road in the city of Flint. We are a medical marijuana dispensary. I am here today to just kind of put our name out there as well as my name and let you know a little bit about myself as well as the business that I have ran here in the city of Flint since 2010. I am a single mom of an autistic son. I have run the Green Bean, like I said, since 2010. If you ask me when I was in high school or even in college, if I would do that for a career, I would tell you, you're probably crazy. I happened to fall into this industry when I had a sick relative, and this was kind of their only option. So I did a lot of research on it and educated myself on it and just realized all the benefits, and it kind of started from there. Since we've been in business here, we've had no complaints, no civil complaints, no criminal complaints. We were one of the first licensed here in the city when the ordinance passed in 2015. We've had the privilege to helping the city and growing with the city. A couple of things that of our accomplishments that we have, we've been able to donate to the Whaley Children's Center, help them with the children for Christmas. We also performed multiple cleanups in the city. We performed a water drive where we collected donations to help the city collect water, and then we matched the donations, purchased the water, and donate it to the residents in the city. We've also raised money for the food bank, as well as collected toys for Tots. I most recently have been working with Harletta from the Blight Division in the city of Flint. And I've really just been trying to get ideas on how to more help the city. We are located close to a school, Nethercutt School. I have tried to reach out to them several times to contact the principal to just let them know who we are, what we do, and we are just here to really help in any way that's needed. I would love to do something for the children with the end of the year, maybe do like an ice cream thing or a pizza party or something like that. So I'm really just kind of trying to get our name out there, tell you who I am, just let you know that we have open doors. If anyone would love to come by our store, I would love to give you a tour and tell you a little bit more about what we do. I know there's kind of a stigma on the industry that I'm in, and we've always tried to break that and be a staple of what a dispensary should be and be a staple of, you know, just to be a good business in the city of Flint. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, Eddie Thomas.
Good evening, board members and guests. I am Eddie Thomas. I am here tonight residing at 29120 Point O Woods Place, Southfield, Michigan. But I'm here tonight as I wear many hats. I am the principal at Eisenhower Elementary School, but I'm here on behalf of Congress, the president of the Administrative Union. We are here because to urge you to pass the strategic plan that has been sitting collecting dust for a couple of years. A committee over 100 people spent a lot of time and effort offering their opinions, beliefs, and philosophies on this plan. And I think their work should be valued and appreciated. This plan is a blueprint to help principals implement the district's vision, and without a vision you shall perish, and we are wasting valuable time by not having this plan together. It also dictates what quality education that we'll be able to afford our scholars. We would like to have a stellar 21st century education for our students. We're waiting on you to help us pass this chart. In addition, it also informs our partners. We have a lot of varied partnerships, and I know some of you have strong personalities about different organizations and their role in our district. But sometimes, for the sake of the children, we have to put aside our personal philosophies and beliefs and do what's right for our children. This board has the opportunity to be a legacy board where you're presiding over a surplus budget, where you can sign agreements to build new schools and renovate schools. And you will be the talk of the town for centuries because you did this important work and you made some tough votes. And all the time, we don't get what we want, but sometimes we do it for the sake of others. And lastly, data is important. The organizations that provide service to us need to be able to collect data to help inform us as building leaders of what activities and programming that our kids need and deserve, and if they're effective or not. So we need to bring that data sharing agreement back for our school partners. Thank you and have a good evening.
Thank you. Our next speaker, Carrie Downs.
Good evening, Board. My name is Carrie Downs. I have the honor of serving as the director of the Flint Community Education Initiative, led by the Crim Fitness Foundation, located at 452 South Saginaw here in Flint. I'd like to share a Flint CI update with you tonight, but first I just want to say it was an absolute pleasure earlier this week to be with so many of you at the Excellence in Education Awards. Just so grateful to really have an opportunity on Monday night to honor all of the excellent staff members and educators that we have here in the Flint Community Schools. And a special note, I just absolutely want to celebrate Miss Monica Elston. in receiving the Superstar Award at the award ceremony on Monday. She just really is a phenomenal part of the Flint Community School community, and we're so grateful for her in community ed. First, I want to share that Brownell was able to host an all-day STEM project with 30 parents and 239 scholars, and they use their Innovation Fund dollars. These are additional dollars that we bring to the table to make sure that we have great opportunities for our students, and they focused on STEM lessons for the day. Additionally, I want to honor the work at Holmes, the Holmes Community Education team. They were able to work with Doyle Ryder and Potter to host the scholars at a 6th grade transition field trip. And this is so that the graduating scholars coming from the elementary schools have an opportunity to meet their 7th grade teachers. They did this in partnership with the Holmes, Potter, and Doyle Ryder administrators. And they even had 7th grade students who have already made that transition connect with students to let them know all the great things that they could expect going to that new school. Additionally, the community ed team at the Accelerated Learning Academy here worked diligently to make sure that scholars had great exposure to trades and career opportunities that they're interested in. And we always like to do college positive and career positive opportunities. ALA did this by hosting a trade day with Mott Community College in April. On both days, students visited booths during lunch and connected with representatives from different trades and departments of Mott Community College. Also, various tradesmen visited junior and senior classes to talk about careers. Parents partnered with the schools to improve attendance. Holmes' attendance team, and that's consisted of school staff, as well as the community school director, coordinated an end-of-the-year celebration in regards to attendance in partnership with other community school directors from Pierce. They were able to take 28 scholars to Cedar Point from Holmes to celebrate their excellent year of academic and attendance achievement. Scholars with 5 or less absences for the school year were invited to the trip. In addition, any students who had a 4.0 or honor roll were also invited to attend. April saw the biggest growth for DTM's Success Mentoring program for the 21-22 school year. Success Mentoring enrollment has reached 25 unique scholars, and they have shown growth in their attendance using that strategy of Success Mentoring. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone here from the public who wishes to address the board? Is anyone else? I now turn the floor over to Trustee Gibbert for the Human Resource Committee of the whole meeting.
Thank you,
You're welcome.
Madam President. I would like to call the Human Resource Committee of the whole meeting to order. I will now call upon Superintendent Jones to present action to the board.
Greetings, board members, and greetings to our public. Good evening. I seek a motion and a second from the board to move Resolution 1.10, Personnel Recommendations, to the regular board meeting on June 15, 2022 for adoption.
Support.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Brother Chris?
Yes. Have there been any wage cuts or reductions in any of these numbers here, in the salaries?
Have there been any wage reductions in any of the?
Or wage cuts, yeah.
No.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, a motion to move Resolution 1.10, personnel recommendations to the regular meeting for adoption will be conducted by a roll call vote. As I call your name, please say yes or no to approve this motion. Trustee Green is a no, is absent. Assistant Secretary Treasurer Dale Maroon,
Yes.
Secretary Booz,
Yes.
Treasurer McIntyre, President McNeil,
Yes.
Vice President McIntosh is no, absent. And myself, Trustee Gilbert, is yes. Motion passes a vote of 5 yes and 0, well, 2 no, I guess.
Point of information, it's not 2 noes, it's just 2 absent. It's not a no. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, just two
We
absent.
have 2 absent. It's not 2 no.
Thank you. Let me restate the vote.
Okay.
Motion passes, 5 yes, 0 no. Please continue, Mr. Jones.
Yes, sir. I seek a motion and a second from the board to move Resolution 1.11, authorization to approve insurance vendor contracts to the regular meeting on June 15, 2022 for adoption.
So moved. Support.
It's been properly moved and second. Is there any discussion? Any discussion?
Yes.
Brother Chris?
This contract, help me, is it a renewal?
This contract, yes, it's a rollover. We've been using this company. We are looking into other opportunities for insurance, but at this time, we're doing what the board had asked by bringing this back to ensure that we renew it.
When we have contracts that are renewable, are they generally written for a renewable, are they generally written so that the renewability is at the option of the district or of the vendor or both?
It's the option of both, but we as a district can determine if we want to work with a particular vendor as we please.
So at the point of renewal, we could back out, they could back out, they could raise prices.
Depending on the contract, depending on what type of contract it is. This is a service that is necessary for the insurance of all of our staff members. So that's worked out prior to.
And is this at the same premium that it was in the past year? Oh, very good.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Superintendent Jones, is there any, the premiums increase as I look through it on the computer? Those increases go to all the way to 24, is that?
Are you, where are we? You says you look at it on the computer. You talking
I
about
may
from
have
the
been looking.
contract?
Yes, I may have been looking at something else, but I was looking on the computer and
As a point of information, I hope you were looking at something else because I was just told that they stayed the same.
stays the same?
Nothing has changed in our contract as it pertains to our obligation and their obligation. Now, if we're talking about, as you can see here, it says 2020, 2022, 15% of payroll, 15%, 2022, 2024. Group life, 12 per 1,000, 2022 to 2024, same thing.
Okay.
So I hope that's what you're referring
Yeah,
to.
Thank you, that did help. I was kind of looking at the workman's comp TPA, and I saw that the excess workman's comp, so I just was trying to figure out, because that was the same. It increased in 22, 23, which $100 or so. And so that was the only thing that I noticed, but that was the only question that I had. That is for the staff and administration?
That is for staff, but that is a part of how workman comp work.
Okay.
Now, I'm thinking that, Mr. Del Moroni, we're talking about the long-term disability, group life, and AD&D. So if we're talking about workman comps, that's how it works.
Okay.
And that's depending on the number of staff, which changes every year. All right? It changes every year. So we have vacancies that did not get filled.
Okay.
So it changes depending on our staffing,
Okay.
okay?
It always expires on June 30th of
Yes,
the
sir.
expiration date.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, the motion to move Resolution 1.11, authorization to approve insurance vendor contracts to the regular board meeting for adoption will be conducted by a roll call vote. As I call your name, please say yes or no to approve the motion. Trustee Green is absent. Assistant Secretary Treasurer Dale Maroney.
Yes.
Secretary Booz.
Yes.
Treasurer McIntyre.
Yes.
President McNeil.
Yes.
Vice President McIntosh is absent. And myself, Trustee Gilbert, is yes. And motion passes by a vote of 5 yes and 0 noes. Thank you, Mr. Jones.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Seeing no further business, I declare the Human Resource Committee of the whole meeting adjourned. I now turn the floor over to Treasurer McIntyre for the Finance and Operations Committee of the whole portion of the agenda.
I would like to call the Finance and Operations Committee of the whole meeting to order. I will now call upon Superintendent Jones to present action to the board.
Good evening again. I'm going to ask Ms. Wolf, Interim Executive Director of Finance, to please come forward to share the budget PowerPoint with the board and our community. Treasurer McIntyre, if board members will be having questions answered throughout the presentation, is this the desire, or would you like to hold questions until the end?
What would be the pleasure of the board? I don't want to make a unilateral decision. What would everybody be more amenable to?
For me, I would say throughout.
And just like
I would say at the end.
at the end? What do you-
I would say we write our question down at the end so it can just flow, and then we can come back.
Is that okay for you
I
to
would
be at
like-
the?
I would like to do it throughout as well.
All right, well, since we have a couple of throughouts and a couple at the ends, maybe we can do throughout, and then if you can, if they're urgent, if possible, try to refrain and hold out to the end if at all possible, unless it just seems like it's something that's urgent, please.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
We ready? Yeah. All right, great, thanks. Hi, you guys know me, Dr. Wolf, Interim Executive Director of Finance. We're going to start off, I want to discuss the budget development process. As you can see on here, the first thing we look at is our staffing profiles. So I work with Human Resources, Learning Support Services, the Director of State and Federal, to ensure that the vacancies that we have open, the positions that are there are still applicable, and that where we're standing with staffing. So district staff, the salary plus the benefits represent approximately 56% of the district's expenses. Contracted staff make up an additional 16% of the budget. Both of these combined are approximately 72% of the overall budget. Fringe benefits and retirement costs for the next fiscal year are reviewed and updated in the staffing profile. And this is important because every year your ORS is updating, there's different rates for benefits. We know sometimes in advance what those are, and we're budgeting for those, and you can estimate based on historical data. Grants are also individually budgeted and reviewed. This means we're going to look at what we have currently in this current fiscal year and for next fiscal year, because we may have some carryover dollars. And so understanding where these grants are going to fall in which fiscal year, and we're budgeting appropriately based on that. Grant expenditures are approximately 38% of the overall budget. The special education section of the general fund budget is budgeted within the Department of Learning Support Services. These services are required to be provided by state and federal laws. Staffing agreements are reviewed for these, and positions are also identified for the needs of the children. I don't know if it's a little bit, there we go. Learning support expenditures are approximately 12% of the overall budget. So approved contracted services are reviewed annually and amounts are budgeted. We had, you see a few that just came through today. Other ones include transportation, custodial, technology. All of these are large contracts that are developed into our budget on an ongoing basis. Athletic accounts are budgeted with the direct input of the athletic director and his knowledge of the sports the districts will be participating in for the upcoming year. Remaining general fund expenditures such as heating, electrical, office, and teaching supplies are all rolled into the new fiscal year. And a copy of the board budget here was submitted to the contracted consultant you guys have. So I did talk to Carrie a little bit about this via email. So next I wanted to do a quick snapshot, if I may, of the current COVID funds for fiscal year 22. I have 11P, Gear, ESSER Equity, ESSER 1, ESSER 2, and then I did highlight ESSER 3 because it is forthcoming. We did not spend anything in fiscal year 22 for ESSER 3, but we do anticipate spending some in fiscal year 23. So I did want to bring this forth. 11P, the Gear, and ESSER Equity all end this fiscal year. So it's important to understand what the snapshot is saying. These balances were as of 5/31/22. What we have there, so we still have some time for like the Gear and the ESSER Equity to do some transfers to cover those. So we're within, for Gear, I can tell you the actual percentage here. I have that for you. So that $14,000 right there is 3.7% of the Gear budget. And we have some lines identified that I'm going back and reviewing because I think some charges got charged maybe to general fund and or another grant that could be pushed into that grant to close that out. So we're very close, and this is pretty typical of any grant. When you get to that last bit, that last 5% you're always reviewing just because sometimes there's a little bit of overages and underages there, okay? The ESSER Equity, that one we have right around 18%, but we have some outstanding items that have not been paid as of 5/31. So we're working towards getting that one closed out fully before the grant closeout. Please remember that the dates that are on there are the last day I can spend, and then I have an additional 60 days to close it out and pay for the items that we have acquired prior to that date.
Quick question. So on the, what is that, 11P, the Gear, that's money well, let me just go to the 11P. That's money that we've, let me say, lost or did not spend. It's no longer available?
Well, 11P closed in December. However, that came via our state aid, so that's just something we're gonna have to look through the lines and reclass that. So we're also looking into that one for you as well. And that is only 1.93% of the actual allocation we were given, so that 25.5.
Yeah, sure. So where I come from, $25,500 is a lot of money.
It is a lot of money, I agree.
That we may not, that was available to us that we may not be able to spend. Likewise, coming up real quick here by, would you say 60 days? you have to spend it beyond those close dates.
Right, so
So we're coming up real close to losing some, nearly $400,000.
I'm fairly confident that we will find it within the budget. So what happens is, so like the 25.5, the 14,000, and the 356, let's look at these individually because they are funded differently. One came our state aid. So I'm sure if I review our transactions prior to December 31st, I would find where that 25.5 was probably coded to another grant and/or our general fund, and we can move it into there. It's just a reclassification within our books. So this is just part of the end of year cleanup that we're doing. I
Okay,
know for.
What you are saying, is that based on past experience? Or what makes you say that? Is it possible we'll go in and look for that money and everything's been properly spent and we'll just go, well, it's 25.5 that we missed?
Oh, no. I've already looked into it. So I've already identified some lines. We just have to finalize those and approve those lines.
And that's the reason why they're not up there? Why
Well, that was a snapshot as of 5/31. So when I did that, so we're now 8 days, 9 days into the month. So since that date, I have already gone in and looked at these different grants and started identifying actual charges in the general fund that could be supplanted into those grants that are allowable based on the narratives in those.
8 to 9 days into this month, I understand that, but we're, what, 5-6 months into the 25.5?
Point of information.
Yeah.
Do you understand how accounting practices works, Chris, in terms of allocating the line items and identifying charges and surcharges and things like that?
I believe I do. I believe I
Okay,
do, yeah.
so I believe what Tish is saying is that it's just a matter of identifying where the money we've already spent the money. It's identifying to close out our books at the end of the year. This is just a process. This is an accounting process, a financial process that is done. So it's not like there's anything out of the ordinary or untoward that's happening here. This is just closing out the books at the end of the year. So to me, I think Ms. Wolf is doing an amazing job, given the transition from CFO to, you stepping into 3 or 4 roles. And I think this is very, very healthy, from a treasurer's point of view. This is like she pointed out, it's the 11P is 1.9%, and it's just a matter of figuring out where the line items in the general fund can be transferred, or where we can not reallocate. It's not like we're shifting things around in the budget, but this is just how accounting is done. I don't know how else to explain it to you. So I'm kind of perplexed with your questions. It's just a matter of balancing the budget at the end of the year. We haven't done anything wrong. We haven't lost any money. We haven't failed to spend any money. This is just how it is. And I think Ms. Wolf is just doing due diligence and making sure that all the Ts are crossed and the Is are dotted. So,
I don't doubt any of that. My question's centered around that there is a close date there, and she immediately shift that we're only 8 or 9 days into June, referring to the gear and the ESSER equity, and I'm saying we're 6 months into the 11P. And I'm being told that, well, as soon as we go through the paperwork, the books, we're going to find that. And I'm saying, is that based on past history or what?
it's based on accounting, Chris. I mean, that's what the point of order, the point of information is. This is just standard accounting practices. That's why I asked if you understood how things worked.
Well,
It
maybe,
sounds like you don't.
well, once again, thank you for your opinion. But, all I'm seeing up there is we had spent as of 5/31/22, $54,907. The remaining balance is $25,500. Then it says close date. I'm reading that to be the close date to spend the money. Am I not reading that correctly, or what?
You are reading that correctly, so I want
am reading
to,
it
you are,
correctly.
but can
Thank you.
I just say something real quick
Yeah,
if I may?
Oh,
So
absolutely.
the 11P is different than the gear and the ESSER equity. And the reason that is because 11P came via my state aid. So while we develop the narratives and we find those allocations, sometimes the charges that we had intended for maybe just hit a different grant prior to then, prior to the close of that date. I know we've already spent the 25.5, it's just, it hit the wrong account in our books, and it was identified when we're doing these final reports and closing everything out. So
Okay.
this is just a simple journal entry to clear it, and so when we report up to the state via our FID at the end of the year after our final audit, the state will take the FID reports over the last 3 years from the time we were awarded, which 11P was awarded it was recognized in 2021. So they'll take my 2021, 21, 22, and they'll make sure that the expenses I send up through my FID will align with that grant number, because the grant is identified via the state. So that one's a little bit different because you don't have to do like a final report on it. The gear and ESSER equity, those are cash-based grants, meaning I'm gonna have to pay for it up front and then get reimbursed. So if we were talking the gear and the ESSER equity, those are a little bit more nerve-wracking because those are the cash-based ones, and I truly have a 60-day window from the time frame of those grants.
Thank you for that better explanation.
Happy to.
Without criticism. Thank you.
Happy to help in any way, guys. So, yep, yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Wolf. And thank you, Chris, for your question. It was very pointed. I just had about the compliance part. Does each one of the ESSERs, they have a different compliance, or do they have a same window? I understand the date. You kind of brought that out as he asked the question. But is it any type of reporting to the state or whoever has to, along with that, does that cover this closing date, or you have some 60-day that I heard you talk about?
Either way.
So a lot of the compliance part is on me and in the grants department. And to answer your question, yes, as there are different compliance rules that regulate ESSER 1, 2, and 3. So for instance, in ESSER 3, we have to do the 20% set aside to address academic learning loss. That was an additional requirement that came in ESSER 3 that was not in the previous two appropriations. So yes, there are books of compliance rules that regulate each of these grants.
So if I may, through the chair, through Ms. Wolf to you, do they move or they stay the same? Each, you know,
They've been moving because as a nation, we've never been through a global pandemic, right? There was an urgency from the legislator to push funds out to schools to help support. And so in some instances, you know, they've been building this plane as we're flying it around compliance, right? And so there's still work rules that are coming out, audit rules that are coming out, allowables. So those things are still yet being developed because of the urgency to push resources to local districts.
now does that comes from the federal government, or it comes to the state, or it just?
We are, the Michigan Department of Education is our fiduciary as a district. So everything, we submit our applications initially to MDE, they review them and approve them. So we don't get money directly from the feds, it goes through MDE, then to Flint Community Schools.
Just one final question to Ms. Wolf and yourself. During this time, so we're not trying to turn no money back over to nobody, right?
Correct. I mean, Mr. Demaroni raises, you know, a valid point that
thought he did.
we have allocations, and we, as Dr. Wolf stated, the majority of our grants are reimbursables. We expend the funds first, and then we draw the funds down. 11P was unique in that they placed it on our state aid, saying we're going to give you this money. It's in your bank account as you will receive your student pupil account. So that 11P was unique in that regard. They just placed it on state aid. But everything else, we have to have expenditures for and then be reimbursed.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. Ms. Wolf, thank you.
I just want to say, good questions, good answers.
Thanks. So these funds, and all of these grants are used to support the pandemic-related expenses that the district is incurring. An additional $25 million was budgeted for FY '23 for ESSER 3. And the reason why we guessed right around 25 million, because we have to think about what can we actually spend in one fiscal year. With the market the way it's running, if we're doing large projects, the timeframes of getting some of these items in and actually billed and received within a year, we didn't think we could do the whole 45 million, so we're anticipating the 25 is where we're starting for, because we still have a little bit of funds in ESSER 1 and ESSER 2 that are rolling over and closing next year, and we need to focus on making sure we clear those out before ESSER 3. But I just wanted to highlight the dates on there and the importance of, yeah.
So I want to get clarity, so, we won't have any problem with ESSER 3, utilizing the fund by September 2024?
Well, I'm going to defer that one to Mr. Jones here.
I really appreciate that question. But that goes back to board members, approving architects. We can't spend unless you approve. And so that's what we've been talking about, the urgency of now, of getting some approval so we can get architects into our district to tell us what it's going to cost us to put in a new roof over at Brownell or any renovations we want to do at the schools. So I can't give you numbers of what it's going to cost to put in a roof because I'm not right? We can't bring in a company to just do that. You have to make sure you go through the right process if ESSER is going to pay for it. And so renovations, a lot of this money goes back to being able to get those approvals so we can move forward.
Perfect. And then the next slide is just one we had from one of our MDE meetings here that also discusses the grant timelines. As you can see, those closeout dates, and then it's also going to give us the dates of when we have to report. So our compliance part that you guys were asking for are also on this timeline. Next, I just want to talk about the current fiscal year that we're operating in and through June 30. Our beginning fund balance, based on our audit report from last year, was $27,259,797. We're expecting revenues that we can recognize in $68,999,701. Our expenditures exceed our revenues. They are at $75,451,486. Still an operating deficit this year estimated at $6,451,785, leaving an ending balance of $20,808,012. Yeah.
When we look at, maybe you can educate me a little here, when we're looking at those expenditures, are we looking at, when we first came on board, we was talking about kind of reducing the expenses? I'm not even talking about salaries and stuff, because the problem, the focus was like the platform. We got a lot of platforms that we had this discussion about. So are we looking at how we can cut some of these expenses that's been going over and over? I mean, what you gonna call them? They've been
Yes, ma'am.
around for a
Yes,
while, and I think that's one of our biggest problems. We just keep having these same expenses.
So a lot of what you're speaking of are title. Those apps are paid for. Most of those academic apps are paid for through title. So we have reduced and tried to allocate those funds for something else. But I want to be clear that there's a difference between our general budget deficit and then title funds or grant funds. Okay, and please be clear on what these dollars,
Absolutely.
you know,
Yeah, I think the next slide may help a little bit, and I do want to just annotate that this is this current year. This is before any agreements with any negotiated contracts for next year. So we're just looking at this current fiscal year, okay? Oh,
So
yeah.
is this the same operating deficit? Like, I don't remember it being 6 million for, wasn't it? And I'm talking off the top of my head, wasn't it like 9 or something? Is this like a revised?
So we look at it every year. Every year, that number will fluctuate.
Right,
And the
so this
reason.
this
Ye-
isn't, I'm thinking of a number from maybe the
Maybe
previous
previous,
year?
yeah.
Or- Okay, or this isn't like a revised number from like a couple of months ago?
So when the 21-22 amendment that was done in February-ish, right, when Ayana was here? So February, she had you at like 7.3 million. And the next slide, if I may, just scoot next here, which if you flip your packet over, you can see that all the way on the left, it would be the third number from the bottom here. That negative net change in fund balance right there, that negative 7.3 million. So at the end of the year, so there's a lot of working parts when we do our budget, so I want to be clear. So when we're getting ready to present a budget, we're looking at it, 60 days out before we're presenting to you. I mean, like trying to finalize it 60 days out. And a lot of things can happen. Approvals can happen, people can change. Like, there's a lot that goes on. So I want to make sure that you guys are comfortable with why some of these numbers are changing. And if you want to discuss any of these lines, I can tell you who's in them, what type of services are in them. So I think it might bring some more clarity going, like for this budget and for next year for the general fund, because there's a lot of things that are encompassed in there. We'll look at it from a high level, but I think that it's super imperative you guys have a clear understanding of who and what's in there.
Okay, so we're looking at the final budget, the final budget numbers versus the
The
amended.
amendment.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's-
the
that-
amendment
okay.
that was presented earlier.
Right, okay.
So if we may, we'll just look at like revenues at one, and then we'll move our way down the form, if that's okay with everybody. So we'll begin with revenues. So there was a slight reduction here in the local.
Just one moment.
Yeah.
Are we all together? I know we're kind of moving, but I just want everyone to feel like you're getting what you need out of it.
So let me say this, Pastor Gilbert and myself, we came on, and I'm not speaking for him, but we came on at the end of September, 1st of October. And in my opinion, I don't think there has been adequate training as to how the budget of the district works.
Okay.
All the funding sources, whether they're grants, whether they're whatever they may be, all the expenses, mandatory, whatever. I think we need something like that from somewhere, from yourself, the superintendent, I'm not sure,
Okay.
to get,
So point of information, MASB has specific classes for that.
Yeah, they trained us, I took the training. I know just like you when I came on, but then MASB has everything the board needs, and I took the training, you can go out there and find it, and just book your training. But I took the training on finance and the budget, and the ESSA fund, you did that as well. So, MASB provides the board all the training they need, and always go out to MASB and look it up, click it on what you want, and take it from there. Oh, I'm sorry.
And you're getting constant emails from MASB about the classes that are being provided, and there's always classes being provided. And so if you want any of the finance ones or the governance, I mean, there's just dozens and dozens of classes that you can do.
And they got some new classes coming up. They got
Yeah,
three-day
we just-
training, I think, in Muskegon is coming up. And that is one of the things that they're saying that this board need to do. We need to get all the training we can get, but you have to go in your portal and look at your portal and get your training. I feel you because I was like you, but I caught up by going through the training. Oh, great. Who's running? It's your meeting.
Is it my meeting?
Just to,
Are we in finance? I apologize, you guys. Okay, Pastor Gilbert.
thank you, Madam Chair. Brother Chris, I did look at it on the way just before I got ready to come to the meeting, and they did, Madam President is correct. They just sent the email. I just got it. It's about 10 classes.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And so it has to do with getting on board and doing a campaign of remaining on the board, how to do it, how to kind of what to look for and stuff like that for candidates and stuff. And so that's what I've done. I just went in there, or I made a call to Brad, and he lead me to Laura or somebody. They got all kind of people. So that may be the way to go, because I understand some of it, but as Ms. Wolf talks, she kind of opens it up a little more, and then I have more questions, because then I understand what she's talking about. And prior to her starting, you just don't know. Because for me, my experience, my wife handles all my money. I don't even know what's what. But all I know is that every time I want some money, she always gives me some. That's all I care about. I don't always get what I want. But, and that's what this is that you got compliance and stuff like that. You got ends, but it just needs to be a little bit clearer. And I'm with you. I think it's still a little foggy, and we appreciate you, Ms. Wolf. We're not trying to be disrespectful or put you in no environment. We really are trying to pick your brain.
That's okay.
Because you don't seem to be uncomfortable. You seem to be right at home doing this, so
This
that's
is
why.
my favorite thing to do.
That's why we're doing it.
It's silly, but it is.
If I
So,
just, if I just may, real quickly, and I understand that we need to have continuous training and retraining, but it seems like when I first joined, it was, here's a couple packets and read them, and then we had the training in November,
Yeah.
and MSAB, or someone should say, no, this is your first training. Make sure you take these classes, because these are what is very important. How to evaluate a superintendent, how to better understand the financial statements, whatever it may be, to get us moving, as opposed to say, in this case, go to Grand Rapids and pick what classes you want. Because we really don't know what to pick, because there's so many of the 100 level classes, and they're all maybe interesting, whatever. But I just think that there's an opportunity for improvement for new board members. The acronyms, what all the acronyms mean, and different things of that nature. But
So, oh, okay, yeah, go ahead.
I understand what you're saying, but we kind of right in the middle of the budget. But those CB, those 100 series, I have completed all the mines, so now I'm a level 1 certified board member, because I completed all the 100 series. They have them set up according to where you at, and if you go through that and you click on and you do it, every now and then I hops out if I see something I want and do that. And so now I'm in the 200 series, but they're just something you have to do on your own. Nobody gonna call you and ask you to do it, because it's free to you, and you just have to have that initiative to kind of go out there tomorrow and just take them. But keep in mind, you don't have to go in the number. So I took some 200 series because I wanted something that I wanted to know. And so you don't have to be consistent in that part of it.
Yeah, so, and if I may,
Yeah, go
normally, when you're elected at the election cycle, the MASB is very good about onboarding new members. You and Pastor Gilbert and Ms. Booz were exceptional in that you took over roles as they were vacated. And so MASB, I don't think you could look at MASB saying, well, they didn't, onboard us correctly, or they could do more. They do a phenomenal job under normal circumstances, but Flint is not under normal circumstances, with this board turnover. So I can't stress enough, and this has been said to you over and over and over again, go to MASB and everything is available to you, but you have to do it. You have to take the classes. Read through the classes, read through the descriptions, and take the classes that you need to take. I mean, it's as simple as that. When I got thrown into the treasurer position, I called MASB and said, I've never been a treasurer. What do I need to do? Like, give them a call. Ask them, what do you think? I mean, Chris, just come on. If you continue, Ms. Wolf.
Okay, so I'm going to start with our revenues. And the first one on our revenues is local revenue. It's important to remember that with revenues, I can only recognize some of my revenues that we've actually received. So we're going to start here with local sources. Local sources are going to consist of a lot of different things. This could be your per pupil allocation that's coming. This can be your taxes that are coming in. This could be local grants from local organizations that are coming in. So the local sources right now, based on where we're going to land at the end of the year, we're going to have a slight reduction, and that's due to, the student count and us not using all of some of the local grants we had. I have to carry them over into next year. So some of those dollars are being carried into next year. Your state sources are coming straight from the state. They're not the federal dollars, but they are state dollars, looking at risk, those type of grants that are coming in from the state. My federal sources, we're very well aware of our federal sources, your titles, your ESSERs, those type of sources. So, and then interdistrict and other sources, this here is our Public Act 18 that we received from the ISD. So I have one more payment coming in, and that's why there's a slight increase there. Again, it's not uncommon to have reductions in these areas, because if we couldn't spend the dollars before June 30, I'm carrying them over into next year, and I have to reduce where I thought we were going to be mid-year.
So I do have a question about
Absolutely.
the interdistrict sources.
Yeah.
Have we followed through and, made sure whether ISD has paid us everything that they need to?
Yeah. So I monitor what's coming in from the ISD and have a really great relationship with them, and I talk to them on a weekly basis. So I'm very confident with the numbers that I see that are coming in and the payments that are coming in.
But even previous ones, because we have had some hiccups
In
with
the prior
ISD
years?
yes, in prior
Okay.
years. So prior to this great relationship that you have with them,
Mm-hmm.
we haven't had that. So can we just make sure that that's all been taken care of? Because I seem to remember there were some outstanding questions about
Okay.
whether all of that money had indeed been given
Came back
to Flint Community
Oh,
Schools.
it would be my pleasure to look into
Thank
that.
you.
Absolutely. That's not a problem at all. I'll take that note and make sure we start looking
Thank
into
you.
that.
That would be
Yeah,
great.
absolutely. So while our amendment showed us being right around 90 million, we had some, you gotta think like, we thought maybe we'd be further along with Doyle Ryder, some of these larger projects that were going to be funded federally. Since we had to push the timeline a little bit, there's a reduction there. And that reduction and pushing it forward to next fiscal year, we're reducing the revenues to right around 68 million is what I can recognize. Because I can only recognize what we've actually spent in the budget, okay? So it's really important. It's not that I lost it or it just went away. It's being rolled into the next year, okay? So we're reducing the revenues there. Were there any questions in the revenue area? And again, these are just estimates. Things will come up and go back and forth, and then when the auditor comes in, we'll finalize the final numbers and they'll do a final presentation for us, so. Yep. And then we're gonna go into the expenditures if we may. We're gonna do these in sections again. We'll start first with the basic programs here. So this first section, your basic programs, 1-1, well, I always consider it a 1-1X, so sorry, let me just not say that out loud. That's my funding lines, I'm sorry. So your basic programs are gonna be anything associated with your building levels, your elementary, your middle school, your high school. So these are like direct wages for teachers. It can be programs that are being operated out of there. Anything that I'm coding to a building with a very specific function code that's directly tied to your high school, middle school, elementary buildings. And this also includes summer school programs. This will also include your early childhood. All of those fun things are also in there. So it's not just your K through 12. So we need to be mindful of that as well. There's a slight reduction, and again, this is all going to realign just because of some of the expenditures we weren't spending with some of these federal dollars. We didn't get some of our supplies in time that we're anticipating coming in over the summer, so we're going to have to push that forward to next year. Because if I don't receive it in the building before June 30, I can't recognize it. So it's important. And then the next one is your additional needs. This is going to be your learning support services, your compensatory education, and any CTE programs that we're running. And we do have one grant that is the EDP grant that is my CTE program. So that one's also encompassed in this line. So this will be wages, benefits, supplies, anything to support those programs are in there. This can be contracted services. LSS had a lot of vacancies, and we tried to make up for it with some of those contracted services we went out for bid for. So there is a slight reduction there just because I couldn't make up all of the vacancies we had. So that's a large majority of where some of that reduction is there. And then the adult and continuing education is kind of just what it sounds like. It's your adult education. It's going to be your gateway to college, your graduation alliance. So anything with those programs are encompassed within that line. And we just had a slight reduction in there based on what I could see in the system in my conversations. So in my total instruction, I'm taking you from 36 million down to the 30 million. Were there any questions in those three buckets? Those are big buckets. So, perfect. If you think of any along the way, just let me know. No worries. So the next, we're going to move into support services. Your first one in here is your pupil support. And while this might think, this one, let me just tell you what's in there. You have your truancy officers, your guidance officers, your counselors are in there, health services, psychological services, speech is in there, social workers are in there, visual aids like parapros that maybe are assisting in the classroom. You have some teacher consultants in there, and any type of monitoring services are in that line. So this encompasses several different departments. You're thinking your nurses, your social workers, all of those are in there. Next, we have your instructional staff, that's going to be your, that's going to be your support services, just like your health services there. So they're going to be more in the instructional portion of it. This is also supporting your instructional staff, like their PD, their training, anything that's going to be driven down to those classrooms that I need to help, so not me per se, but the district needs to help support those instructional teachers in the classroom to do what they need to do in there, whether it's training and all of that. So general administration, that's going to be your Board of Education, your executive administration, your grants and procurement. And when I say general administration or executive administration, it's not everybody, it's just a few different buckets. School administration is going to be your principals, assistant principals, and your secretaries. Your business is your finance department, and I want to make sure you understand that that's all of the finance department, your accounts payable, your purchasing, and this will also be some of your insurances and audit services. So there's some things that fall in there. It's not solely based on wages and salaries only in that line. Operation and maintenance, this is everything that Pete does here. So this is going to be there's a lot of things that are encompassed in there. There's a significant amount of building things that go on in there and contracts that are in there. Your custodial and maintenance, those major things are also encompassed in there. Pupil transportation is just as it sounds. It's our transportation, not only for general, it's for our special education and athletics. Central administration, This is going to be like VARTEC, this one, I do want to highlight in here, this is where we code our stability payments. So while this looks really large, it is due to those workforce stability payments that we're giving out. Those are coded in that line, so I do want to highlight that that line will be like that as long as those are going forward, but as soon as those are no longer applicable, that line will reduce significantly, okay? So it's important you guys understand what is all encompassed in there. Your athletics is just as it sounds, it's only athletics, anything to do with the events, contracted services. This other line, where we're going from 27 to 1.3, this is our state loan repayment. We have capital projects that are in there. Doyle Ryder Roof is a great example of a capital project. Anything that we're doing that is significantly large that's going to be coded as a capital project goes in there. And then we have the GISD payment that goes in there. Community services, which is the final line on this section. This is anything we do for community relations, community activities. There's a significant amount of like the title nights that we do, things like that are in this one, and your non-pubs. So anything we're doing within our non-publics that we're supporting, all of those will go in there as well.
Would that include marketing or no?
No, well, okay, so it's yes and no. So there is allocation and line items within the different budgets that support community activities and being able to market what's going on in those. But as far as marketing per se, no. Marketing is going to be more up in, I would say up in this other one with like VARTEC and stuff. That's where it's going to be. It's going to be up there in like the 2.8. I say 2.8, I'm sorry.
Oh.
Let me, to the central activities there.
Okay.
Okay? So that's a great question, because you do have lines for different activities that we would code as a 3.1, you know, which is community services, and it would directly tie into that line there, but we're marketing it there. Yeah, Chris.
So I cannot let it pass
Okay.
on operations and maintenance.
Yeah.
And this is no reflection on anyone directly or indirectly, because some have just inherited this stuff. But when I see operations and maintenance, I try to pull into our parking lots. It's virtually impossible, not only because of the number of potholes at the entryway and throughout the parking lot, but because of signage, because of lights that are out, because of lights that are missing. I was at Southwestern yesterday. I was going the wrong way on a one-way area where students are dropped off simply because the signs were so twisted, I didn't know which way to go. They've been hit probably by buses because the sign itself is twisted. I'll call it the stanchion that they sit in was moved, so the sign is pointing this way, but the sign is bent pointing back the other way. There is no indication at many of our schools as to where the main entrance is. I've walked around our schools pulling on doors, look like I'm some type of, I don't know, someone who's trying to get into the school, because I'm looking for an unlocked door, because none of the doors are marked. Receiving door, main entrance, exit, nothing. What looks like a main entrance is not a main entrance at some of our schools. Again, one of the first things I brought up when I came on the board, that the potholes are terrible in our parking lots. How does it get this way? This is not a 6-month problem, a 1 year, a 2, 3 year problem. I mean, Southwestern has no parking area or whatever sign, and it's so faded, you nearly have to get out of your car to read it. how do we get to this point? Is there a maintenance schedule? Every 5 years we replace signs, every so often we throw some water in a pothole, see if it works to fill it up? I
Point
don't
of
know.
order, point of order.
Sure.
We're discussing the budget, the end of the
We
year
are.
budget. This is kind of going off on a little bit of a tangent. Could we maybe, I know that you brought this up before. I know it's something that's dear to your heart, that's something that we need to discuss, but right now, we are in the middle of the finance portion of the cow, and we're talking about the end of the year budget.
Yes, and I think if we had our standing committee finance meetings, some of these questions would have been asked and answered by the time we got here. Now, I think this is germane in the sense of operation and maintenance. Do we have a maintenance schedule to spend $10 million a year?
Point of information. Oh, no, you probably have, you can do it better. Go ahead.
Flint hasn't had any money over the course of, I want to say, 2010, all the way leading up to ESSER. There has been no money. And so a lot of what you see, I wasn't here all those years, but the knowledge that I do have, listening to previous superintendents and other workers that have been in Mr. Pete's spot, is there hasn't been a budget to spend money. And so to answer your question, no, there hasn't been a maintenance schedule because they've been working with pennies. So there hasn't been any money to handle any of those things. And so I do understand that there's been a lot of money that come in with academics, a lot of money that come in to help the whole child, whole student mentality. But as it pertains to doing things like you're speaking, parking lot, that's why me and you sat down with the mayor, because we're not able to spend those funds on those things. And so that's how I would answer that. But I think we do have an opportunity, Mr. Del Maroney, in the funds that we do have now to start having conversation about that.
This ending fund balance of $20,808,012,
Yes.
is that money available for school building maintenance? Any of it?
That's our money to make payroll. That's our money to pay our contractors. So to say that we could allocate every penny, I would have to advise against that, because we do have expenses such as payroll and those type of contracts that we need to ensure we're doing. It's a great question, because I do feel this, and I do.
If we had a contract for maintenance, could that money come out of there?
Yeah, that's a general fund budget.
Yeah.
So that's like our savings account.
Yeah.
So once it's in the bank account and it's, it's ours to spend the way we want to. However, I have to be mindful, it's no different than receiving a paycheck. You might know you have a car payment coming up, and we have to be mindful, do we have enough to make that payment? So maybe, Mr. Jones, you can.
I would just say that we could have that conversation of how we want to allocate some of those funds, but we have to keep in mind that we're coming up on 2 union contracts, and we haven't even added those 2 union contracts to our deficit. So we do have to do some more conversations about closing buildings. I want to say that publicly, because we're going to have to look into spend next year. Our team have been planning and talking about a full plan so that you can see from the administration's point of view of what we need to do to bring this deficit down and to bring us into a better future. So should some of those things be in that plan? Yes, sir. I think we can find it, but we have to really do some deep diving into what we can spend and what we should not spend, because that fund balance can be gone in 2 years.
Absolutely.
So, you know, we're still working with throwing things into ESSER right now, but at some point, ESSER is going to be gone. People are looking at this fund balance and saying, we have money. You can't look at it that way. You have to look at it as until ESSER is gone, you're okay. But when ESSER is gone, that 20 million is going to go. As you can see, we had a deficit of this year of 6.5. And she's going to get into what next year will look like, which is going to be a little lower, but still we have to think like that. Every year, we're taking money out of that fund balance to pay something. So I think we can have that conversation, Mr. Del Moroni, but it's a matter of planning out how we're going to use this opportunity with ESSER.
And as long as we continue to run a deficit, we're going to deplete this fund balance.
Correct.
Correct? And by keeping schools open longer, not closing them starting in August, that continues the run on the deficit, not totally, but in part, and it will deplete that fund balance.
Absolutely.
Would you recommend that schools are closed in August of 2022 as opposed to August of 2023?
So I would not make that type of recommendation. That would come through the superintendent, so I'm not
From a
comfortable.
financial perspective.
Still, there's a lot of working parts and components that go into that,
Okay.
a lot of market variables that would need to be discussed and,
Thank you.
yeah.
I think we got a lot going on in our minds and stuff, and a lot, and we, you know, when we're doing the budget hearing, we're supposed to stay germane to the budget hearing. And I think at the end, we can have these questions, because a lot of questions you have has a lot with us to do with passing that strategic plan and making a decision about the ESSER fund, getting renovation. You talking about closing school, if you're talking about closing school, you gotta be talking about building new schools. So these are things that the board have to address, not Ms. Herr, not the superintendent. This lies on the board. Right now, we have a responsibility to the state to get this budget done by June the 30th. Then we can come back and we lost 6 weeks that we should have been addressing that stuff. But according to the state, we have to stick to this and get this part done. And I will put those things down, Chris, because we do have to have those conversations as it relate to ESSER 3, the strategic plan, and all of that stuff, so we can start to bringing pupils in so we don't have to be in a deficit. We losing money because we don't have kids. We don't have decent schools. So I just think we need to stay to the budget so we can get that done, because she's going to have to make some changes and come back to us. And they're very strict about this deadline. We had a problem last year, June the 30th, and we're right around the corner. So I just think we need to get through this part of it, and then some good questions, but it's between the board. The board make those decisions. Thank you.
Perfect. So he did mention the 20 million at the end of the year. I do want to say that we ended last year at 39.3% for a fund balance. At 20 million, we will be at 30.16. That includes my COVID dollars. So it's important and imperative that you understand how this is already depleting, even though I have ESSER dollars that I can supplant with right now.
What was that about the 30 million?
No, not 30 million, 30.16 for your fund balance. Percent. Percent.
So it will reduce by that much?
We're
What are
going
you
from 39.3 to 30.16.
For the fund balance? What am I seeing 20 million about?
That's a percentage, Chris, different. So when the state's calculating this, they're looking at what our ending balance is over our revenues. We take our prior year ending balance plus our revenues this year, subtracting out our expenses, and then you get a number and you put that back over your revenue. So the state requires us to stay within a 5% fund balance. Anything below that, we're going to go back into early warning and back in with the Treasury in an EDEP status when you hit those negative numbers. Fiscal year 18-19, we had a negative 4.5% fund balance. ESSER started in 19-20, and because of that, we went from a negative 4.5 to 17.9. Last year, we were at 39.3, and now we're back down to 30.6. So, okay. Next, we're going to talk about next fiscal year 23. Beginning fund balance would be the ending of this current year where we estimate to be. Revenues, we're recognizing estimated, of course, at 80 million. Expenditures at 84, still operating in a deficit at $3.7 million, leaving our fund balance down to the $17 million. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Taking into account the, when you just jogged my memory, with the negotiations, for example, the communication that we were given today, is this projected into this?
It is projected. It's hard to see because it is already we did not use ESSER dollars during negotiations, so let's be 100%
No, we can't.
transparent,
Right.
okay?
Absolutely.
So some of those costs are already rolled up in some of my grants, so it's harder to see right now, but I can guarantee that first year when we're out of ESSER, you're gonna see it like bam,
Yeah,
and you're gonna
yeah.
be like, what's going on? And it is directly tied to the decisions for this fiscal year coming up. So I can't stress that enough. I did hold the allowance for our per pupil at 8,700. I am aware of the governor's proposed budget, but she has not signed it yet. Being a deficit, just coming out of the EDEP scenario, I did not feel comfortable overestimating my revenues. Once the governor signs that, we can do a modification to the budget if the board desires that, and I can do that real quickly.
So
for
real
you.
quick, oh, I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
No, I was just moving.
Real quick, there is going to be an increase in the allocation for each one of our FTEs. It's passed through the Senate, but the governor has not signed it off on it. Once that happens, we're going to go from 8,700 to,
It's an additional 453,
okay, so that's going to go up to about 91.
91,
Yeah,
43.
9,100. So I just want to put that out there so you know, okay? But we did not put that in this because it's not been totally approved.
And I just wanted to be conservative and fiscally responsible and not overestimate those revenues and have to come back and say, I was hoping she was going to sign it. So I anticipate she will. I have no qualms with that. So we'll go right into, I did estimate our student count at 2557. It's imperative to understand too that this is not necessarily who's sitting in the classroom, but this is who I'm being paid for. So as we have students transition in and out of the district, if they're not picked up during one of my 2 count days, we still service that student, but I just don't get paid for it. So it's important to understand that my budget projections are based on what I'm paid for.
What happens a lot of times, board members, is other districts or charters may keep scholars up until that count day. We get the bulk of our count in October, and then all of a sudden we get an influx of scholars late October, going into November. We can't count them as FTE. We count them as a student in our. Of course, we count them, but we can't get paid for them. So just be clear, when you see that we have 3,200 scholars, we can't get paid for all 3,200 scholars because they weren't with us during count. Okay, just want to make that plain.
So our fiscal year 23 is on the next page here for you. This is the same things that we talked about at the fiscal year 22. Those same allocations and same buckets of who's in those are all encompassed in this. We do roll in, so I do have it spread out a little bit for you so you can see the general fund versus the grant fund and versus special education fund, so you can kind of see where these numbers are driving and specifically who they're servicing, what type of funding source throughout the budget here. I anticipate we're hoping to spend right around that 80 million mark for revenues. We're hoping to spend right around the 84 million for expenditures. Again, significant portion is grant funded. And ending balance of the 17 million.
Just a note, point of information for Chris, that this is something that we've got to have turned in by the 30th, but this might be something to keep your eye on, to have those discussions that you want to have, because we can look here and see where we would like to try to work to reduce spending in particular areas, or maybe, you know, try to find some of the resources to do those parking lots, or, you know, anything like that. So this is the projected, you know, for the next year. And since we do just have to get these things that are mandated by the state in by the end of the month, you know, it's a formality, but then we can revise this as we're going along and have those conversations, and maybe have some, what are these things on the agenda? Put some, you know, look at this to specifically be more cognizant or mindful of the agenda moving forward.
Kind of like making budget amendments? Be fair to
Yeah,
to make
I can do a
budget
budget
amendments?
amendment at any time. I just need some notice. There's a lot of parts that go into it, so I do respectfully ask, like, if you
Sure.
ask for one, I might not, depending on when you're asking for it, might not be able to get it that next board meeting, but the following for sure, at least, okay? It is a process. I do have to have discussions with people, okay? The next one is the truth in taxation. So this is a very important document that I do need approved if we can at the next board meeting, because this is what's going to drive our taxes. I'm pulling for our taxes, sinking fund, and our bond payment. And then I'm going to go through these pretty quickly. These are not as big as the general fund budget. Next is our student activities budget. What this is where we estimated at the beginning, you know, this is a fairly new transparency, so we weren't quite sure with COVID coming right out of a virtual setting how we were going to react this year with collecting money at the student activities. This is fundraising, different aspects, you know, proms, different class things that they're doing at the building level. So all of these funds are monitored at our level, but are actually collected at the building level. Right now, I'm showing the ending balance there for fiscal year 22 at 1.5 million. It's important to understand these are completely restricted to those buildings and those accounts. Cannot be used for anything outside of what those accounts are open for. Next, I'm going to show you where I think we're going to be for fiscal year 23. I think that we're going to operate probably fairly close to what we're doing this year, because we operated in a kind of a hybrid model for a few months, but I anticipate next year being fully operational, you know, in person. I think that those will increase slightly. The food service budget, you can go right there. So for fiscal year 22, this one we're actually showing, you know, obviously positive fund balance, which is a good thing. We do have to be mindful we can only carry so much of a fund balance in our food service. So next year, we will need to have some discussions at some of our committee meetings as to how we're going to spend some of these dollars to support the food service fund. And it has to be restricted and go back to the program, so. Next is, go ahead.
I'm still, for the operations and maintenance,
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
does that come out of the food budget?
Oh, so there is an operations and maintenance. So it's titled that because of the function code. So like your heating, gas, electricity, all of those type of things, or the boiler parts that need to go in there to keep the heat going for them. Or if they have a stove that goes down and some gas needs to be fixed, that's all in there. It is still considered operations and maintenance.
So it's not part of the food budget?
It is part of the food budget.
It is, so this is what we're paying to run Southwestern, not Southwestern, Northwestern.
Yeah.
Strictly to have the kitchen open. What would be the operations and maintenance if, would we still be paying the entire operations and maintenance for Northwestern if there were other programs and things in that building?
So no, I do not allow Poor Pete to charge my food service budget for anything that might be maintenance related for maybe a leaky roof on the other side. If it is not something pertaining to the food service, I cannot charge it to the food service budget. So there are other things that do get charged into our general fund for Northwestern.
Okay.
These are actually items to ensure the food service is operational. So these are, there's not a lot of,
So only the kitchen area, not anything else?
well,
And-
when you're speaking heat or something of that nature, I can't divide it out for each part of the building, but I know that the heat's not on the whole building. So we,
Okay, because I was just, because when I first came onto the board, that was how it was explained to me.
Oh,
Was that
okay.
we're paying for the maintenance and operations of the entire building out of the food service budget.
oh no, that's not allowable. That's not allowable. Only what needs to be supportive for the food service. So I have to be able to bring it back to the food service. We do need electric, we do need the heat. If you were to put more programs in there, then we would do a prorated amount of those based on those programs. So we'd start dividing it out based on how much square footage each person is using or something. We would find a
So
common.
our operations and maintenance would go down if we were to be utilizing that building. So that we would be able to share some of the expenses.
Oh, yeah.
So in a sense, we are kind of shouldering the expense of the building on the back of the food service.
So
I
for
mean,
heat and electricity, I'm gonna say
Okay.
yes, and I'm not gonna, go down on that one. But I mean, I don't let Pete charge roofing supplies or other parts
Okay.
to the food service. So I am very, like, the food service bills come through me. So I do restrict it because it is a restricted revenue. It's treated just like a grant would be treated. So I have to be mindful of the things that are charged to it.
All right. And then the cost of the food service is like set by the state. Is that correct, or?
Well, no, I mean, we're charged per meal through Sodexo currently. So that food service line that you see on there, that is, it's a combination of the food, the supplies, their overhead, their cost, and it's all rolled into one service and it's rolled up in there. So it's hard to distinguish how much is actually food versus labor. I'd have to pull the reports. I can do that for you, and if that's something you need, we can do that.
I was just trying to like jog my memory, so thank you.
Yeah, we don't divide it out on the actual budget projections.
Okay. But I mean, the state still has to kind of agree
Oh, yeah.
to what we're feeding and providing and how much it's costing. and
Yeah,
stuff,
not
so-
just the state, the federal government too.
Right, okay.
Everybody has their hands in it,
Everybody has
so,
their say.
Yeah,
Yep, okay.
yep, absolutely. And then for fiscal year '23, you can see that I'm hoping we're gonna have the increase in the revenues and the expenses. I expect the expenses to go up as I expect more kids to be eating. We're gonna be virtual. We're crossing our fingers, or not virtual, we're not gonna be virtual next year is what I'm hoping for. So I projected an increase in students eating and having more food and hopefully some catered meals, some great things is what I'm hoping for there. Again, at the end of the year, our fund balance will increase, but I hope that maybe during the amendments, we can decrease that by going right back into the program. And that is it.
Do any board members have any questions regarding the presentation?
I have one. On the COVID funds for fiscal year 2022, it gets to ESSER 3, and it talks about remaining balance of 45. Nothing was spent. I thought we were receiving more than $45 million in
We
ESSER
will.
funds.
It is actually approved in increments, so this is what
Okay.
the current award amount is in our MEG system. So I want to be transparent on that as well. I should have mentioned that, and that is a great question, so thank you for bringing that up.
All right.
Thanks, Chris. I was going to ask the same question, but thanks.
And is it possible to get a, I'm going to call it, this is going to be my terminology, okay?
Okay, yeah.
So a paid pupil count and also a non-paid pupil count. Because I know MSAB has their governmental affairs unit, And what needs to be done is legislative action at the state level so that we're not incurring the expense of a student for, let me say, most of the year while some other school district gets all the funding for that student. I mean, because it's problematic for us and other school districts throughout the state. And if we can have that, we can begin that argument to show how it affects us both in student counts and also in the funding that we're losing or let me say not getting, to make an argument to Lansing, you need to change this. You know, you prorate it, do something that's fair to Flint and other districts like us.
And you can always see what we're paid for on our state aid status report. So if you Google state aid status report, and then you just type in, you know, Flint Community Schools, you'll be able to see what my paid per pupil allocation is. It is important you monitor that because it is changing throughout the year as they're recognizing reports, because we go back and forth all year long with the state on what we're always fighting for our money.
That's the paid pupil.
That is the
What
paid
about the
piece.
non-paid?
So I would just say, when we do our pupil counts, and we have count day in October, and that kind of, a week before that starts the process. So the process can go on for up to 6 to 8 weeks or 10 weeks, depending on the reason why a student was absent. So then at the end of the count period, we do receive a report called the DS 4061 that tells us this is what your pupil count was, but this is what your FTE count was. So your FTE is your full-time equivalency. That's what we're being paid against. So for instance, if we take yourself, Mr. Del Moroni, if you're a high school student and you have 6 periods at Southwestern, but you were absent on 4th hour on count day, and we have 10 days for you to go back to 4th hour, but you never go back, we have to prorate your FTE to a 0.9 and not a full 1. So we go through that complete attendance process to verify how many FTEs we're actually able to walk away with full and whole. And also with our learning support services students that have IEPs, a portion of their FTE may be prorated based on the amount of service they receive in their IEP. So we do have an official student count where everybody is one, and then we have an FTE count, which is how our funds are distributed. So we can see this is how many scholars you have, this is how many scholars you were truly paid for to educate.
And so what we'll do is make sure that we give the board both numbers. So where we ended this year as far as our student count, and then how many FTEs we have, because he wants to use that as an argument to the state, correct?
Right. So I understand what you were saying, Ms. Scianna. That's on our end, on the Flint side. But what I want to know is after count day and the 6 to 8 weeks you were referring to, after those 8 weeks, how many students do we receive from an out-county school that now we have to take care of that we never got money and they're still getting it?
So
That's
I want
ongoing,
I want to clarify with the count process. So if I transferred from another school into Flint after count day, but I was counted in that school district, there is a process that we use called Section 25, where the district can receive a prorated FTE because I was counted in another in-state school, right?
Okay.
There are opportunities where scholars come in, and we have this where they come in after count day from what I call the couch. I just showed up. I haven't been in any one school yet. I show up. I live in your district. You must educate me. So we do have some of those counts as well. But the state does currently have a process. If I'm counted in another district on count day, where our district puts in a request to receive a prorated FTE for the days. And that happens from the day after count until the next count period in February, where we do what's called Section 25.
So maybe there is not a problem then? I mean, if we're being prorated and we're
I
getting
think
the
there is an
couch day?
effort to acknowledge that scholars move from district to district. In this time of the year, in the spring of the year, it's worse, because there is no proration, there is no Section 25, it's after all count day, And there are districts, schools that say, Kiana has gotten in way too much trouble, we're done, you need to go to your neighborhood district. And there is zero funding that will follow that scholar to
Okay.
their neighborhood district. So that is definitely this spring, I call it spring cleaning. That's what happens. We receive a lot of scholars, and that impacts our school community, but we enroll them because we're their resident district.
So there is a problem.
There's still an issue there with that spring cleaning, definitely.
But we also must say that we are getting some money. There was a time, wasn't getting anything after count day, they just drop them off in the public school and wasn't getting anything. So I think, we have gotten a little better, because I think it's unfair when they get the money and we wasn't getting it. But we still got a lot of, a long ways to go. But like you said, spring drop now, so, and them the ones you get and say they need a new start. But Teresa, I just want to say this as a president of the board, you have done a remarkable job in presenting this budget. You made it very clear where we could understand it as board members. You took all the drama out of it. I really do, I appreciate what you did. I did want to know, I think we had reached out to Carrie Sakowski. Did she reach out to you?
Yep, she
And-
applied.
Yeah, and so we didn't hear nothing else back from her, so I think you did a great job. But I really appreciate
Yeah, appreciate it.
the clarity that we have. It's so much better, and I really appreciate that.
Hey, no problem, happy to.
Yes, and I wanted to just reiterate too, thank you. It was a very pleasant process this year.
It wasn't
and-
difficult, my goodness.
Right, and you made it very, you broke everything down, made everything really clear, and I appreciate that. And you were very, patient with all of our questions, because we are not the experts by any means. Thank you.
Happy to help, that's what I'm here for.
Okay, thank you.
And I would like to say thank you, because I'm still fairly new, and this did help me a lot. I learned a lot about our school budget tonight, so thank you.
So is that all for the, no, but for the board members having any questions?
I think Ms.
We're-
Moss is still.
No, I'm just ready to move on.
Right, no, I was just going through, just to make sure that we are all finished with our questions for Ms. Wolf. All right, and so, Mr. Jones, if you can
Okay.
continue?
I seek a motion and a second from the board to move Resolution 11.14, approval of FY '22 Final General Fund Budget Amendment.
So moved.
Support.
All right, it's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing no further discussion, the motion to move Resolution 11.14, approval of FY '22 Final General Fund Budget Amendment to the regular meeting for adoption, will be conducted by a roll call vote. As I call your name, please say yes or no to approve this motion. Trustee Green is absent. Trustee Gilbert?
Yes.
Vice President McIntosh is absent. Assistant Secretary Treasurer Del Moroni.
Yes.
Secretary Booz.
Yes.
President McNeil.
Yes.
And myself, Treasurer McIntyre, yes. Motion passes by a vote of 5-0. Please continue, Mr. Jones.
I seek a motion and a second from the board to move Resolution 11.15, approval of FY '23 Initial General Fund Budget to the regular meeting on June 15th for adoption.
I so move.
Support.
Has been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Trustee Del Moroni?
Yes. Is there a significant difference between this resolution here and what we were just given with this budget here? Are they tied in somehow? Are they?
So, on 11.15 resolution, that's for the '23 initial general fund budget. So
Oh,
that would
okay.
be in your PowerPoint there. Oh, I did not put page numbers, I apologize, but there is. That's the one where we end up with the 17 million for the
Million.
fund
Okay.
balance. That's your '23
That's
initial.
the tie-in.
Yeah, that's your
Okay.
tie-in.
All right, thank you.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, it's what is projected for the next year, and then when we actually spend the money and balance that budget, then we'll have the budget amendment like we're doing now, but for the next year.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any other further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, the motion to move Resolution 11.15, approval of the FY23 initial general fund budget to the regular board meeting for adoption will be conducted by a roll call vote. As I call your name, please say yes or no to approve this motion. Trustee Green is absent. Trustee Gilbert?
Yes.
Vice President McIntosh is absent. Assistant Secretary Treasurer Del Maroni?
Yes.
Secretary Booz?
Yes.
President McNeil?
Yes.
Myself, Treasurer McIntyre, yes. Motion passes by a vote of 5 yes to 0 no. Please continue, Mr. Jones.
I seek a motion and a second from the board to move Resolution 11.16, approval of FY22 final student activities budget amendment to the regular meeting on June 15th for adoption.
Support.
You've moved.
So moved, I'm sorry. So
Support.
moved.
It has been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing no, any discussion? Seeing no further discussion, the motion to move Resolution 11.16, approval of the FY22 final student activities budget amendment to the regular board meeting for adoption will be conducted by a roll call vote. As I call your name, please say yes or no to approve this motion. Trustee Green is absent. Trustee Gilbert?
Yes.
Vice President McIntosh is absent. Assistant Secretary Treasurer Del Maroni?
Yes.
Secretary Booz?
Yes.
President McNeil?
Yes.
Myself, Treasurer McIntyre, yes. Motion passes by a vote of 5 yes to 0 no. Please continue, Mr. Jones.
I seek a motion and a second from the board to move Resolution 11.17, approval of FY23 initial student activities budget to the regular meeting on June 15th for adoption.
So moved.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing no further discussion, the motion to move Resolution 11.17, approval of the FY23 initial student activities budget to the regular board meeting for adoption will be conducted by a roll call vote. As I call your name, please say yes or no to approve this motion. Trustee Green is absent. Trustee Gilbert?
Yes.
Vice President McIntosh is absent. Assistant Secretary Treasurer Del Maroni?
Yes.
Secretary Booz?
Yes.
President McNeil?
Yes.
Myself, Treasurer McIntyre. Motion passes by a vote of 5 yes to 0 no. Please continue, Mr. Jones.
I seek a motion and a second from the board to move Resolution 11.18, tax levies 2022-2023 to the regular meeting on June 15th for adoption.
Support.
So moved.
So moved, sorry, I'm reading the words.
Support.
It has been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing no further discussion, the motion to move Resolution 11.18, tax levies 2022 to 2023 to the regular board meeting for adoption will be conducted by a roll call vote. As I call your name, please say yes or no to approve this motion. Trustee Green is absent. Trustee Gilbert?
Yes.
Vice President McIntosh is absent. Assistant Secretary Treasurer Del Maroni?
Yes.
Secretary Booz?
Yes.
President McNeil?
Yes.
Myself, Treasurer McIntyre, yes. Motion passes by a vote of 5 yes to 0 no. Please continue, Mr. Jones.
I seek a motion and a second from the board to move Resolution 11.19, approval of FY22 final food service budget amendment to the regular board meeting June 15th for adoption.
So moved.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Chris?
I think we're changing vendors, so will this, let me close out the account with this current vendor, or
Yep.
how's that work?
Yeah, so the payments to them are developed in each budget. So we'll go through fiscal year '22 with our current vendor, and then fiscal year '23 will be with our new vendor. And that's how the budgets are built.
Thank you.
Yep.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion to move Resolution 11.19, approval of the FY22 final food service budget amendment to the regular board meeting for adoption will be conducted by a roll call vote. As I call your name, please say yes or no to approve this motion. Trustee Green is absent. Trustee Gilbert?
Yes.
Vice President McIntosh is absent. Assistant Secretary Treasurer Del Maroni?
Yes.
Secretary Booz?
Yes.
President McNeil?
Yes.
Myself, Treasurer McIntyre, yes. Motion passes by a vote of 5 yes to 0 no. Please continue, Mr. Jones.
I seek a motion and a second from the board to move Resolution 11.20, approval of FY23 initial food service budget to the regular meeting on June 15th for adoption.
So moved.
Support.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing no further discussion, the motion to move Resolution 11.20, approval of the FY23 initial food service budget to the regular board meeting for adoption will be conducted by a roll call vote. As I call your name, please say yes or no to approve this motion. Trustee Green is absent. Trustee Gilbert?
Yes.
Vice President McIntosh is absent. Assistant Secretary Treasurer Del Maroni?
Yes.
Secretary Booz?
Yes.
President McNeil?
Yes.
Myself, Treasurer McIntyre, yes. Motion passes by a vote of 5 yes to 0 no. Please continue, Mr. Jones.
Board members, this item was tabled at the May 18 regular meeting and is being brought back for approval. Board members wanted to look over the information. I seek a motion and a second from the board to move Resolution 11.11, custodial and maintenance services, to the regular meeting on June 15th for adoption.
So moved.
Support.
It has been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing no further discussion, the motion to move Resolution 11.11, custodial and maintenance services, to the regular board meeting for adoption will be conducted by a roll call vote. As I call your name, please say yes or no to approve this motion. Trustee Green is absent. Trustee Gilbert?
Yes.
Vice President McIntosh is absent. Assistant Secretary Treasurer Del Maroni?
Yes.
Secretary Booz?
Yes.
President McNeil?
Yes.
Myself, Treasurer McIntyre, yes. Motion passes by a vote of 5 yes to 0 no. Please continue, Mr. Jones.
I seek a motion and a second from the board to move Resolution 11.21, authorization to renew school safety advocate services, to the regular meeting on June 15th, 2022 for adoption.
So moved.
Support.
It has been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing no further discussion, the motion to move Resolution 11.21, authorization to renew school safety advocate services, to the regular board meeting for adoption will be conducted by a roll call vote. As I call your name, please say yes or no to approve this motion. Trustee Green is absent. Trustee Gilbert?
Yes.
Vice President McIntosh is absent. Assistant Secretary Treasurer Del Maroni?
Yes.
Secretary Booz?
Yes.
President McNeil?
Yes.
Myself, Treasurer McIntyre, yes. Motion passes by a vote of 5 yes to 0 no. Please continue, Mr. Jones.
I seek a motion and a second from the board to move Resolution 11.22, authorization to enter into a lease agreement, to the regular meeting on June 15th, 2022 for adoption.
Support.
Or-
So moved. So moved.
Support.
It has been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
So here in June or July, rates will be going up, postal rates. Will this machine be able to do that, or should we expect a change order at some point?
So we purchase from my understanding, we purchase all of our stamps or, because they
Point
slide
of
it through.
information, Ms. Wolf, could you? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, sorry. So my understanding is we slide it through and then it stamps it on there, so I'm not using physical stamps. As of June 30, the machine we're currently operating with will not work and will not support any of these new regulations that are coming out. So this lease agreement is gonna get us a brand-new machine. It's a lease to own, where before we were actually just leasing it. We've been leasing it forever. At this point, now we're gonna own it in the 5 years. So at that point, then the only thing we're paying on is just the stamps to, like, the meter refill is what I consider it. I don't know what the correct verbiage is, but
Okay.
we just put stamps, like the virtual stamps on there, and they stamp the envelopes, and life is good.
Okay.
Do we have
So
to
it'll-
purchase it? Is there a lease option? I mean,
This
just a.
is a
no, I
lease
mean,
to
just-
own.
I mean, this sounds to me like in 5 years, it's gonna be obsolete anyway, if there's even a postal service left.
I don't,
I'm just wondering if there's any difference, or this is the only option, because who
I
wants
can
that
reach out
machine
to
after
him.
5 years, to be honest?
it'd be my pleasure to reach out to him. I'm not sure how long we've had the other one. I can't even, I went back in the history, I pulled the history on the accounts, and I could see almost 4 years back, and we were been paying right around the same
Yeah.
amount. So I'm assuming, just based on that we've had it longer than that. It's a pretty old machine. But I can ask, you know, I'm
I don't
more
think
than
it's
happy to.
important. I just was kind of curious. I have a
Yeah.
feeling that it's, you know,
Yeah.
six of one, half dozen of another, and in 5 years, the machine's going to be obsolete and end up in a Goodwill.
They update, they'll update you.
President, or Trustee Del Maroni?
Yeah, so just to piggyback on trustee McIntyre's question, have we looked, I mean, to buy it outright on day one, it might be cheaper than to lease it for 5 years. Have we looked at that?
I did not. He did not give me that option, but it'd be my pleasure to reach out to him.
Okay.
He's pretty quick on responding, so I could have that information to you and send it out to the board if that's okay with everybody. Sure.
Is there a fixed cost as to what it'll cost to purchase it in 5 years, or could it change because of inflation or some other?
No, what we're agreeing to, this contract locks us into that 5-year lease to own. So for the next 5 years, your quarterly payments are $896.10 each quarter.
Okay. All right. Okay. Yeah, I'd appreciate that information.
Absolutely.
I guess the question is, you know, can we get that info before we make a decision, or what?
Can I, tell me? I think Mr. Gibble.
Thank you,
next.
Madam President.
I didn't see you, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
I know you did. To Madam Chair McIntyre, I just had we have been leasing the old machine for several years, so my conclusion is that we leased the machine more than 5 years, I guess that's what I read into that, several years or so. It seems to me that I do agree with Sister Laura about the technology. To buy a machine just outright, what does it normally run, about $25,000 or something like that?
Expensive. They very expensive.
I know they're pretty expensive, I know that, that's about what they run.
Can I chime in? I deal with Pit and Bowl a lot, and I have posted machine. It's easy to lease it and do the 3 or 4 years you purchase. By that time, technology's gonna change anyway. They comes in and they updates it they're gonna update it. You just don't really, and even with the 5 years, after 5 years, the system is gonna change anyway. Pit and Bowl is gonna win anyway. And I just found out the process that we're doing now is the best way. Then after 5 years, they'll come back to me and say, well, your machine is outdated. Do you want to update? And then I don't have a big business like this, but when I even had my other small business. So I found out it just depends on what we at. But when I purchase a machine, then after 5 years, they're gonna come up with something different. So either way it go, but the good thing about the lease, they're taking care of all the maintenance, they take care of, and I think it's a percentage of postage that you get, and I think you guys get the reduction rate. You don't pay what I pay, they get the nonprofit rate as well. So it's a lot of benefit comes with the lease and all of that, and that's the advantage that we do have.
Yeah, I would like to emphasize how important that is because none of us know how to fix the machine when
Right.
it gets broken.
And it's
So
sort
it'd
of,
just be an additional
it's
cost.
sort of like the computers.
Yeah,
We
Yeah.
buying them now anyway, but we're gonna probably
Yeah.
buy some more in another year.
they're gonna make sure you do.
Yeah.
So I'd like to put a little different twist into this.
Sure.
So normally, if you buy something outright, it might be cheaper, all other things being equal. But in this case, if we ask them the question, if we don't want to own it at the end of 5 years, we just want to lease it and you folks take care of the maintenance, we don't want to own it at 5 years because of all the reasons that were mentioned earlier, technology will change and things like that. If we don't want to own it at the end of 5 years, what will our lease payment be for 5 years without ownership? And at that point, I would think they might say less. I don't know.
Probably not, but,
But
No, they never do.
I mean, yeah.
In my
so-
experience, it doesn't change.
It
This
doesn't
is,
change, yeah.
this is the deal. We can ask those questions, and we don't have a problem with that. But it's not going to change because technology is going to change, and when it's time, they're going to come with something else.
right.
Yeah.
So, but I do understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, I'm just assuming, this is how it is, but it's always good to ask. So
Absolutely.
yeah, but it's
Yep.
not like, like end of the world if we don't. Pastor Gilbert, you had your,
No, I was just gonna say along those lines is that it's sort of like your burglar alarm system. I mean, after a while, it's been working fine, and all of a sudden, it starts beeping and making noises, and then they contact you and says, well, you've had it for 7 years, and so the technology's changed. We gotta come out and redo this and do that, and instead of it being $35 a month, now it's $105 a month.
I'm just
So
gonna be
that's what happened to. So I kind of
I'm just gonna be
understand.
happy if we still have a national postal system in
Right,
5 years.
yeah,
I'll be pleased.
Because they tried to eradicate all their jobs.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did.
All right, so is there any other discussion? So are we on 11:22? Yes. Okay, seeing so no further discussion, the motion to move Resolution 11.22, authorization to enter into a lease agreement to the regular board meeting for adoption, will be conducted by a roll call vote. As I call your name, please say yes or no to approve this motion. Trustee Green is absent. Trustee Gilbert?
Yes.
Vice President McIntosh is absent. Assistant Secretary Treasurer Del Maroney.
Yes.
Secretary Booz.
Yes.
President McNeil.
Yes.
Myself, Treasurer McIntyre, yes. Motion passes by a vote of 5 yes to 0 no. Please continue, Mr. Jones.
I seek a motion and a second from the board to move Resolution 11.23, authorization to execute one-year service discount pricing agreement with AT&T to the regular meeting on June 15, 2022 for adoption.
So moved.
Support.
It has been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? I do have a question. Is this our only option? AT&T, is this just for phone service, or what else does it entail? I always forget it this time of the year.
Thank you for that question. This is handling just the AT&T hosted communication services. It also includes our old telephone lines, the POT lines that we utilize for various purposes. There are other services that AT&T provides, but it's not included in this contract.
Not in this one. So maybe I'm asking a ridiculous question, but do we need telephones?
Yes, ma'am. I understand the question, though.
It's a good question.
It's not
I mean-
ridiculous at all,
Okay.
but we
Because
do.
it just seems like it's so much, and I know that people are like, you still have phones, and it's. Exactly, but I mean, I just kind of wanted that out there, because they're really fleecing us, but, yeah, okay.
Are you talking land phones or
Yes.
cell
Yes.
phones? Okay,
Yeah, you have to have the landline.
Landline.
okay.
And is this really the best we can do?
We are looking into joining the consortium
Okay.
for the 22 or so odd school districts in Genesee County that works with us at GISD. We're looking into that. A couple of superintendents ago, they took us out of the consortium. And so we are looking into that, but that process takes a little longer than the time we have to keep our phones going for next year. So you've already had a meeting, Kiana's already had a meeting, and we're hoping for the best for the next school year after 23.
So remind me, why were we taken out of the consortium?
That was,
So this
Before.
consortium, the one where we're like with our IT agreement, the one where we're at the bottom of the list, that consortium?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's the consortium.
So what's going on with the intermediate school district and Flint schools? It just seems like we don't have any autonomy. We're not part of, like, don't we have, like, voting rights or anything?
It was
Like,
the choice of the district for some reason.
our district?
To come out of that consortium at the time.
So Flint schools to
Yes.
come out of it. And Flint schools decided to come out of,
The phone consortium.
and what year was this?
I will have to give you that information.
Yeah.
I will. I'll find out that
If
information.
we can find out what year, we'll figure out who did it, and we know. Okay, so we'd have to sort of beg and borrow and steal our way back into the consortium because of some bad decision-making that happened previously? Okay.
I don't know, we have to, I met with them because we were shopping, and we felt exactly how you felt when we saw the contract, that we needed a better option. And so I initiated the meeting with JISD. They're in the midst of that consortium, so they're in like year 2 or 3 of their current agreement. So it's gonna take a little work to us to figure out how do we join midstream. They did lift that the service is not perfect, right? And so that they have had some growing pains in making this transition as well. So there's just some more research that needs to be had in order to make sure when the initial RFP went out for the service, our lines were included in that. The decision to not participate, I'm not exactly sure the rhyme or reason. I know we were getting better rates from AT&T, and then through this next contract, the tariff rates increased, and so therefore our contract increased. So we're digging in, and I knew nothing about this 2 weeks ago to explain it this way, but so I won't say that there was anything less than integrous that was done. It was a decision that was made. Maybe it wasn't the best option for the district at the time based on the contract we had with AT&T. But verifying those facts is what we're going through now.
And can I just say how much I appreciate the work that you're doing, like, you know, coming on and dealing with all of these things, like dealing with things that have happened in the past and like making it the best choice for right now. And I have to say that it just seems like our relationship with the ISD and GISD is getting a lot smoother and a lot more positive, largely in part to the administration and your efforts and your ability to communicate, and just, you know, it's just nice to work with you. And so I think that's being recognized, and so I just want to say that I appreciate that, and that I think that we're really moving forward as a district because of that. So thank you, and we're just putting our trust, I mean, you know, that you're gonna these are just things that we gotta take care of and move forward, and so thank you. Thank you so much. All right, so Chris Del Maroney.
So how many phones are we talking about?
We have over 700 phone lines in the district,
Landlines,
yes.
which you're
And
referring to here as,
And we also have, I believe, 587 with voice as well. So we're working on that. We're eliminating several phones because of several of the buildings that have been closed. And we recently sold a property, so we're going to be eliminating some of those lines. So we're working diligently to get a more specific number for you
okay.
this time.
So when you say plain old telephone lines, you're referring to the landlines and the voiceover? Is that what you had said?
Well, it's a hosted communication services platform that the district utilizes for all the telephone services.
Okay. And so it's going to be, other than that fixed fee of the $38 per line, which would include over about 1,287 lines?
No, a total of about, I think it's 760 lines roughly is what we're dealing with.
760.
570 of those have voicemail capability.
So we'll be paying $33
Correct.
per line is that month or year?
That's per month.
Okay, because I see charges is $38 per line per telephone, and then call, so we have that amount, and then we're paying 9 cents for every call going out. Okay.
So, thank you, Madam Chair. It says the district averages combined 25 to 85 calls per month, and the frequency is dependent upon need. So, getting back to Chris's point about how many phones you got, is it something, is there any way to look at this? And go ahead, Madam President.
Every, if I'm correct, every classroom has a phone, have to have a phone. And they have to have a phone.
Yeah,
in
we
it.
want them to have a
Yeah,
phone in
every
every
classroom, everywhere you go in that building, have to have a line, have to have a phone. And I have to be able to make calls out and put calls on hold. So it's impossible to be in the classroom. You can't grab your cell phone. When the principal needs you or something happened, you have to have that cell phone. Then you got to be connected to the fire and the police department. So that's not going to go anywhere because, you know, you look at the incident in Texas, you know, kids are scrambling using a cell phone.
Yeah, that's correct.
And so, you know, everything is not by penny pinching now. So we need those cell phones in there. We need those phones in there when you're locking down and things like that. So, and Ms. Superintendent, Assistant Superintendent is working on making this a better deal, but there's no way out of the phones. And every classroom have them.
So I come up with a figure of $300,960 just for the service, based on the number of phones and the $33 and 12 months out of the year. What was the cost last year? Because then on top of that will be the calls going out. Do we have an approximate cost?
That annual fee for
It would be annual costs. I would have to run an AP check register, and you have to be mindful, as Mr. Monroe, said earlier, that this isn't the only service that AT&T provides. So when we cut our checks for AT&T, it's for all the services with AT&T. So just this one portion's being renewed. So even if I was to run that check register for you, I would have to give you the backup, and then we'd have to go line by line to try to determine which is specific to this portion of the actual payment that was made.
Okay.
If that it's kind of a hard explanation, but yeah, there's lots of working parts in there. It's not just
Catch-22.
apples to apples in this
No way
one.
out of it.
I kind of tell when I'm trying to find out information on a bill for me at my home, and it's like, don't you folks have computers? So, I mean, that's one of the better use of a computer than to make up the next video game, in my opinion, but, all right.
Any additional discussion? Okay, seeing no further discussion, the motion to move Resolution 11.23. Yes. Authorization to execute one-year service discount pricing agreement with AT&T to the regular board meeting for adoption will be conducted by a roll call vote. As I call your name, please say yes or no to approve this motion. Trustee Green is absent. Trustee Gilbert.
Yes.
Vice President McIntosh is absent. Assistant Secretary Treasurer Del Maroney.
Yes,
Secretary Bruce has stepped out, so is absent. President McNeil.
Yes.
Myself, Treasurer McIntyre, yes. Motion passes by a vote of 4 yes to 0 no. Please continue, Mr. Jones.
I seek a motion.
And a second from the board to move Resolution 11.24, authorization to replace Spalding bricks to the regular board meeting on June 15th for adoption.
So move. Support.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Trustee Del Maroney.
yeah, so I see here on page 115, it says authorization to replace, maybe I'm on the wrong,
105.
Okay, continue.
It's part of it, though, yeah.
Go ahead, I'm all set.
I was only going to ask, I saw them, I passed the other day, and I saw them up there. They happened to be up there around the chimney. And I wanted to know, is it the one, when you're going down Saginaw, going south, and you just look up to the one and over by itself, like, it looks like it's been repaired. So has any of them been completed already, Pete? I'm sorry.
Yes, you're accurate. You got a good eye.
Yeah,
You're
because I
driving down
said that.
Saginaw and you're.
Yeah. Well, I
looking up
stopped. I stopped and they were blowing the horns because I was really looking, and I was telling them to go around me because I seen them. They were up there. So that's why I was able to see them.
And in my explanation, I mentioned that they did repair one, and that is the
Right.
first one they did.
Yeah.
What they did is they brought brick along with them initially for that project, but they used it all up on that one chimney. And what happened is when this renovation was done back in 1980, when they added the north wing onto Mr. Jones's Doyle Ryder school,
Yeah.
they did basically upgrade on some of the brick. They did repair some of the brick, and when they did it, they used a mortar that was too hard.
Yeah, and it
It's a
fell
soft
apart.
brick, but a hard mortar. And what had happened over the 40 years or so, the mortar acting against that, made the brick brittle, if I could say that. And as they were using a grinder, because of the process, they grind out the old mortar, and then they tuck point using a new mortar, and they finish it off, and they basically bring it up to a new standard. And then when it does dry, they seal it. And but in the 40 years since that was done, it had done its damage. And DC Buyers they're a top-notch restoration company for this type of work. And when they contacted me, they said everything we're touching up there is becoming an issue. And but they felt by doing the corners, by replacing the corners, and then grinding and tuck pointing all the joints and all the chimneys, and then finally sealing it, that would be the ultimate thing we could do at this point. And my concern was we just invested all that money into that roof. The last thing we want to do is neglect the chimneys, which we will have to address at a later date. So I wanted to make sure it was done correctly while they were here. And the other part of that equation is they have that equipment here, that huge crane. So that is, $800-900 a day rent on that thing. So you have to keep that in mind, that we had to get the work done right away, or we'd have to revisit this in the near future. So,
Thank you, Pete.
yeah.
And Ms. Wolf, there's no way we can possibly do that. Oh, God. So there's no way it can be ESSER, it has to be general.
It does need to be general because it did not get RFP'd out because this was
Yeah.
part of the emergency
I was
purchase.
just hoping maybe.
I know.
Okay.
I know, wouldn't that be great?
Trustee Del Maroni?
Yes, thank you. So, I'm not sure on what hot water and heat system we have there. A neighbor of mine needed to replace his roof, and the chimney was bad also. And the roofer said, well, why do you want me to replace your chimney? You're going to electric hot water and electric heat. There's no need to vent anything out. So are we up to, let me say, speed to what we have for our heating and hot water versus a chimney? Do we actually need a chimney? Are we going to replace hot water with something else in the future where we may not need a chimney?
You have a valid point, especially in a residential application, because with the new efficiency furnaces and boilers you have in a residential, it's vented with a 2-inch PVC pipe because it's very little heat and whatnot. These chimneys are structural. These are massive masonry structures in themselves, and they do protrude through the roof. And I think what you're saying is if we had a chance, we could eliminate them at some point, but that would be an undertaking of huge magnitude. That would have had to have been done back when this project was being approved back last summer, August or September of last year. And that demolition of that type of material, that would have been massive. That would have, it had been cost prohibitive to do that.
Okay, so we've replaced the roof, and now we're going back to take care of these chimneys.
Correct,
Is that
yeah.
right?
When they're done here in a short period, these chimneys will be brought up to the highest standard possible, along with that brand-new roof, and we're in great shape for decades.
Okay, and was there a reason why the chimney wasn't done when the roof was? Did I miss that?
It was seasonal. If you recall, when they got the roof completed, it was late November, and at that point, the cold temperatures would not work well with dealing with the masonry, with the mortar and whatnot, so they delayed it till this spring. And as soon as the weather got to a certain point, that they've been up there working on it. So
Okay.
that was the reason why it was delayed till spring.
And I've seen that the crane, I think it was a crane that I saw out there,
Yeah.
$900 a day. Are we being charged that when they're not using
That's all,
it?
no, that's all part of, it's all included in this price. And this was approved last summer for the chimney work. It was the brick,
Right.
the replacement of the bricks in the corners, that was that additional
Yeah, I
$31,050.
remember that.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Trustee Gilbert, you had?
No.
Oh, okay. Any other questions, comments? So seeing no further discussion, the motion to move Resolution 11.24, authorization to replace Smalling bricks to the regular board meeting for adoption will be conducted by a roll call vote. As I call your name, please say yes or no to approve this motion. Trustee Green is absent. Trustee Gilbert?
Yes.
Vice President McIntosh is absent. Assistant Secretary Treasurer Del Maroni?
Yes,
Secretary Booz?
Yes.
President McNeil?
Yes.
Myself, Treasurer McIntyre, yes. Motion passes by a vote of 5 yes to 0 no. Please continue, Mr. Jones.
I seek a motion and a second from the board to move Resolution 11.25, authorization to replace lighting fixtures to the regular meeting on June 15th for adoption.
So moved.
Support.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Trustee Del Maroni?
so this would include like the light fixtures that are, this would include the light fixtures that are missing at Southwestern and things like that?
This is at Northwest.
Is that Northwestern? Okay. And do I see Northwestern on here somewhere? Yes, I do. I see it right up here, action needed. Okay. All right, I'm good.
Any further discussion? Okay, seeing no further discussion, the motion to move Resolution 11.25, authorization to replace lighting fixtures to the regular board meeting for adoption will be conducted by a roll call vote. As I call your name, please say yes or no to approve this motion. Trustee Green is absent. Trustee Gilbert?
Yes.
Vice President McIntosh is absent. Assistant Secretary Treasurer Del Maroni?
Yes,
Secretary Bruce?
Yes.
President McNeil?
Yes.
Myself, Treasurer McIntyre, yes. Motion passes by a vote of 5 yes to 0 no. Please continue, Mr. Jones.
All right, board members, at this time, I just wanted to make sure that you did receive the updated information as it pertains to the JCI. We're going to try to give you, we sent that to your email, but we're just going to try to give you a quick update of where we are. Try not to take, Pete, more than about 3 to 5 minutes to explain, so the board, if the board have questions, they have time to do that. All right?
Thank you. Good evening, and as we were directed in our last school board meeting regarding this topic, which was a change order for Johnson Controls for both Freeman and Potter Schools, excuse me. We approached Troon Law Firm, and they did their due diligence, and they contacted directly Johnson Controls and their primary engineer, Dirk Street, who's in charge of the project. Mr. Street cited 5 different locations within the contract, which discussed the different provisions of the project that they have, the scope. And keep in mind, Troon Law Firm looked at this contract prior to them actually starting work back in March 25th of 2019. So they were already familiar with the contract, but based on your direction, they determined that they wanted to get a independent contractor involved, and they contracted CTC Engineering. And Mr. Clark, who is the attorney with the law firm, wanted us to focus on this study because it is independent. And what they came up with, his name is Mr. Glenn Keats, who is an electrical engineer. He's been in the industry for 47 years. And when he saw what the issues were and whatnot, it was quick to point out that it was the additions being made was due to the State Electrical Division, Department of Licensing and Regulation Affairs, which is called LARA, inspection services. And he cited in his letter that you have the 2014 Michigan Electrical Code rules at Part 8, which I actually did look at. But originally, I think the concern was with the board was why didn't Johnson Controls pick up on this before? Why didn't they see this weakness in the system prior to that? And when speaking to Mr. Keats, he said the scope of work started at the main panel inside the mechanical room in each one of these buildings. The focus was not on the service coming from the pole or the wires coming in or into the disconnect, but it was internal to the building. The scope of work was internally working on the air conditioning and working back to the main panel. And what was triggered with the inspection from the state was that the lead, the main service coming into the building, keep in mind this is three-phase power. We're talking about 800 amps of power coming into these buildings with the three-phase, come in through a disconnect. And what was discovered after all the other work was done and as the inspector was there, they shut the power off and they opened up the disconnect and found that it was not fused. And having a disconnect that is not fused is a violation of the electrical code. And so this was not obvious. It was not discussed by Flint schools as far as to check any of this prior to the contract. And so it was under Mr. Keats's understanding and what he scoped out in the letter that the noticing of this type of issue is not typically under the electrical contractor's purview to determine whether a given service is up to code. So what he's saying there is they are bidding on this project with the understanding that they're going to be adding electrical to provide and to support the air conditioners. And they do not, contractors do not walk through the building looking for code violations in this respect. That is the duty of the electrical inspector. So having said all that, he said that if something was done prior to the contract, it would have been called a study investigative approach, which meant they would have gone to each building looking for certain electrical violations. But he said that is cost prohibitive. He said that would have cost a fortune. And that, lastly, that the change order process is a very common practice in all contracts dealing with mechanical and electrical work in buildings. And he also cited that the age of the buildings, we average about 66 years of age in each one of our schools. The electrical is always, at some level, is brought up and is cited by those inspections when they come through looking at the contractor's work. So it wasn't something that they picked up on. And he said if it was picked up prior to work commencing, that would have been billed into the contract anyway. In other words, if they would have discovered this, those costs, $137,399, would have been in the contract, so we would have had to pay for it anyway, in the bond. So it wasn't an oversight, it wasn't a mistake. It was common that the scope of work that Johnson Controls put out was based on the power that was being tied into, which is the main panel.
So, Board, we bring this to you as information. We did not bring this for any action at this moment. And I also want to tell you with that there is air in those buildings. It's just not the quality of air that we have just put in. So they have units in those buildings. I did have a conversation with all of the principals and asked the principals, it was a really hot day. You know, I asked them what did they want to do? Did you want to take off? They said, no, our buildings are fine. We can make it through. So that's the reason why I didn't rush that. I wanted you to be able to hear this, kind of soak that in, and then after, you know, you ask the questions you want to ask, you can give me direction for us to bring that back as an action item to get that resolved before school starts in August.
Thank you. Just a couple quick questions. One can be in, I'll say, violation of a current code, but you're grandfathered in. So are we at that, or we're beyond that? And my other question is it a problem of not having, I think you said, a fuse breaker from the service line coming in at the box? Or is there a problem with the service to where if we were not in violation of the code, we'd still have problems because we don't have enough service coming into the building?
Well, we have plenty of power coming into the building. That
Okay.
wasn't the issue.
All right.
The issue was it was not fused, which is a violation of the electrical system.
Okay.
And by Johnson Controls applying for the permits and bringing up, you know, our building up to a very high standard, obviously, the electrical coming in was, you know, crucial to obviously supplying that power. But the one thing that I wanted to bring up is with the change order, again, it is very typical of this. And I think I realize it's a lot of money, but when you look at the $18 million that we have invested in these buildings, to come across an issue like this, granted, is not easy to swallow, but it is necessary. And as we move forward and remodel these buildings or build new buildings, we're always going to be faced with some type of a change midstream that we're not going to care for. And because building and construction, you're always going to run into an issue that needs to be addressed. And that's why the change order is clearly defined in this contract. And this was back, like I said, March 25th of 2019 when they signed it. I show you this document. This is 114 pages. This is the contract that Johnson Controls and Flint Schools agreed upon. And it's stated in several in several locations of that contract that the remedy for an issue that comes about is the change order.
Okay. And because of this current situation, is the building or any occupants of the building in danger?
Well, that's a good question. That's why they are demanding that this update takes place, because it is a dangerous situation to have 800 amps of power coming into your building without any fusing or any way of, stopping.
Yeah, you can't turn it off.
No. So I think we've been fortunate that, over the the last 70 years or so, because this was built in 1953, that we didn't have an issue that would have created, some tragic event. And that's why the electrical inspector, he's doing his job, basically,
Yeah.
by forcing us. The other thing I want to mention is this will be absorbed into the bond. I mean, we are paying for this, obviously, but that, if this would have been identified early, the same amount of money would have been put into that bond.
Okay, so, Mr. Pete, you basically just stated that he asked, was this dangerous for the people that are in that school building? Are you saying we shouldn't be in school right now?
No, I didn't say
Okay,
that.
well, I need you to
Okay.
clarify.
No, I think what I was trying to say is the electrical inspector is requiring this work to be done
Before we power up that system?
That's correct. Before
Okay.
we power up all the air conditioners in both buildings. And keep in mind, we've invested, millions into these air
Sure, yeah.
conditioners for all the buildings. So it's unfortunate that this came up, but it is required, and it is electrical inspection mandate. It's not something that we have a choice of.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You will be bringing this as a actual item?
Yes, sir, in July.
As to the amount, yeah,
Yes, sir.
because electricity is just nothing to play with. It's nothing else you can do. It happens. I remember when we had a generator we acquired a generator for our home. And the house, our home was so old that we had to go get another box to calculate the usage. And then they said, well, that's going to be a charge. And then others in the neighborhood, they got generators, and they didn't do that. And then the generator wouldn't work. And so when the power would shut off, so I understand some portion of it, and then the contractor that we got, they would not put our generator, install it on our home until we got that new meter from Consumer Power. And Consumer Power said that they would come and put it in free when I called. Chris, I called them, and they said, oh, no problem. They said, we'll put it in free, and we'll just add it to your bill or something. No, it wasn't like that. But I'd already paid for the generator, so I'm stuck. So that's sort of what kind of happened. And then at the same time, the kids, they don't need to be sitting up in class and it's hot.
And Pastor, if it pleases the board, we can turn these documents in to Ms. Monica for Thursday for next week, if you want to go ahead and get this approved
Yes.
at our regular board meeting. So if it pleases the board, we do not have to wait to July.
I don't think we should wait.
Okay.
We
But
can
the-
do it tomorrow, can we?
Well, that would have to be,
Or not tomorrow, no, you're right, next week, yeah.
Yeah,
yeah,
you have to be next week.
yeah. So you have to make a motion or?
Yeah, once we get through.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, the sooner we move on this, the better.
Yeah.
We start school August
Yep.
2nd,
Yep,
and who knows how hot it will be on that day.
Thank you.
And so the sooner we can move on this, the better. So thank you.
thank you.
So do we need a motion to bring this up next week?
We'll have it ready tomorrow.
Tomorrow, we're at the Cow, right?
But tomorrow's a cow meeting, right?
Right. So, I mean, you're saying we could make it action tomorrow to bring up next Thursday?
To bring it to the board meeting on next Wednesday.
Yeah, next
Okay.
Wednesday. That's the proper way to do it.
Yeah,
Tomorrow's a cow.
Right, so what I'm saying, right, I'm not saying bring this tomorrow. I'm saying we can make, I can turn the document in to Ms. Monica Thursday to go into the regular board meeting on next week, and then you make the motion. Monica, is that correct on how I'm saying that?
Yeah, that's correct. That's the
Okay,
only way you can.
all right. We normally turn our documents in on Thursday, so for the following week's board meeting. So what I'm saying is we'll put that in the board packet for next Thursday, and then you can vote on it then.
That's right. That's fine. That's fine. That'll be
Next Wednesday, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
What I'm saying, though, is do we need to take action tonight? Because this is not an actionable item. It's simply an information.
That's what I was saying. I would
We
need
need
you
to take action tonight.
to tell me to do that.
Okay.
We're in information.
We had the information, so the president, yeah.
So it would be.
Point of order. You just entertain the motion, and Rick can make the motion.
I'm
I
just
mean,
He's also
reporting
the
on.
one who's sub-chairing
Okay.
it, so he's in charge right now.
Yeah.
So
So,
we're entertaining a motion to bring action item 12.17 to
Johnson
the,
controls. Johnson
making it
controls.
to the agenda tomorrow.
Are you making that motion?
I can't, I'm just entertaining somebody, something. I'm the president.
I'll move then that we, I'm making a motion. I'm moving that we bring before the cow meeting for the second half of the cow meeting tomorrow to move this electrical update information that we received tonight along with approval of the change order of $30-some thousand.
130-some thousand.
130, geez, that extra number always makes a difference.
Yes, sir.
For action before the board at next week's meeting, Wednesday, whatever that date is,
17th, 15th.
15th of June, 2022.
So we have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
So it's been properly moved and seconded to bring action item 12.17 up in the second half of the cow on Thursday for action item for the regular board meeting on the 15th. Is there any discussion? Seeing that there's no further discussion, I will now take a roll call vote. Roll call, yeah. As I call your name, please say yes or no to approve this motion. Trustee Green is absent. Trustee Gilbert?
Yes.
Vice President McIntosh is absent. Assistant Secretary Treasurer Del Maroney?
Yes.
Secretary Booz?
Yes.
President McNeil?
Yeah.
Myself, Treasurer McIntyre, yes. Motion passes by a vote of 5 yes to 0 no. We're still in the informational section, 12.18. Well, we're still in the informational section, 12. We've gone from 12.18, are we going on to, or 12.17, are we going on to 12.18 for the check register?
Yeah, we're just, if there's any questions for 1218 through 1221,
Well, 12.18, 12.19, 12.20,
1220, that's right.
and then we have 12.21.
Yeah. So the EDEP monthly report, which things have changed a little, the report appears not to have been uploaded properly. Hard copies will be brought tomorrow night, but will be corrected in board book. All right, that's the announcement. But if you have any questions for 12.18 to 12.20, we're here to support.
So does anyone have any questions about 12.18 check register, 12.19 balance sheet, 12.20 budget versus actual. All of those for April 30th, 2022. Does anyone have any questions or any discussion? Okay, seeing none. 12.21 EDEP monthly report. Are there any questions? No? Okay, thank you, Mr. Jones and Mrs. Wolf. Seeing no further business, I declare the Finance and Operations Committee of the Whole meeting adjourned. I now turn the floor over to President McNeil for the Board Committee of the Whole portion of the agenda. Time of adjournment is 9:15.
I will now call upon Superintendent Jones to present the Board Committee of the Whole action items to the Board. Mr. Jones.
Okay, board members, before I seek this motion, we have revised this plan. We have brought this plan to a space where it is the what of what we're supposed to be doing in our district. We removed the how to ensure that we have a concise plan. We've spoken to, board members have had the opportunity to speak to our state superintendent and also to myself to make any changes. And so I seek a motion and second from the board to move Resolution 21.37, authorization to implement the Flint Community Schools 2022-2027 strategic plan to the regular meeting on June 15th.
So moved. Second.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm waiting on you. It has been properly moved and second. Is there any discussions?
I would just like to thank Superintendent Jones and whoever helped you on this for the brevity of the strategic plan, knowing that changes can be made moving forward. Nothing specific that ties or wraps anyone's hands. And so I appreciate that. I will hope that as this passes tonight, which I feel confident it will, that this is sent out to the media and to some of our key community partners to get their feedback, and I'll be blunt, maybe to get a few of their dollars to move this district forward. Honestly, I thought, and this is no reflection upon anyone or any group or individual or anything, that by now we would have been tearing some buildings down and putting some new stuff up. We're well into the construction season, but I would think at the very minimum, this construction season, we could be tearing down most of the buildings that need to be moving forward, so the public can see some action on our part, on the administration's part, and just to help clean up at this point some of the blight in the city. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Any, Trustee
Madam
Gilbert?
President, and to Superintendent Jones and his staff, I won't take a lot of time, but I've thought about this, I've given this some thought, that it's critical as to show forth to the community that we're just one entity. You know, we're not separated, and sometimes that is difficult to do, and you have to learn your way, you have to kind of watch and listen, but I think that this is critical because it was worked on before I got here. Things were discussed and things didn't move for whatever reason, and I do have to admit that Madam President was right. The 6 weeks that some of this awful stuff happened, it did hurt us, but this is where we've got a chance with the EDEP situation and the state helping us and giving us time, and we've got a chance, and the people are looking for us as a board and you as the superintendent, that we do this on the behalf of the kids. And we have a plan, as Brother Chris said, about our partners, community partners, and and normally I wouldn't do this, but I will, because it's about the plan, is that Mont is, and others, we got to show forth that we are sincere about what we're doing, and we know what we're doing. There comes a time when my grandmother used to say that talk is cheap. It won't buy nothing at the market, and it won't buy a slice of bread. So we gotta put forth that great effort to possibly close some schools or tear some schools down or things of this, and build a new school. I think it's important that we get out in front of it. In the summer's the time to do this. I know a lot of people are on vacation and going around and doing different things, but we got to keep the main thing the main thing. And this is critical, and this will help us to be able to put aside all these personal drama and issues with one another. We just got to get beyond it, and sometimes we make mistakes, but this here is the chance for all of us to stand together for the kids and for our city. I mean, this is what I hear in the church. This is what you hear. I know you hear it. You may not tell us all, but they'll tell us, well, Gilbert, what you went over there, what are you doing? You haven't done nothing. And I says, well, I'm just one vote. So I'm grateful that you brought this. It shows leadership. I support you, and you just keep going. And if we think that it's something we don't want, I'm sure that all of us will let you know that, and we'll do it in an open meeting setting. And it won't be necessarily an attack. It will be to make it better, to move it forward. And sometimes it takes some of us a little longer than others to learn that. And so, Superintendent Jones, I do too. I appreciate what you're doing. It shows good leadership, and it will help us as a board to lead as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so I would like to express my gratitude and appreciation for all of the hard work that's gone into the strategic plan. When the state superintendent, when Dr. Rice came, I was relieved, excited. I don't even know what the words were. It was good to have that meeting to clear the air. I feel like it's one of the few times that I can say that a state entity has actually been supportive of something constructive in Flint. So that was a nice change to see that, to see him actually help us with figuring out, the steps that were needed to eliminate the EDEP. That was very much appreciated. And also his constructive criticism to the strategic plan, which it also like reiterated some of what I had been hoping would to see changed. And I have to admit that I am taken aback, and when you were like, I got this, when Dr. Rice said this is what needs to be done, it's going to be a really big, heavy lift, a lot of hard work, and you were like, yep, I got it, I'll get it done next week. And I looked at you like, I was kind of laughing like, yeah, okay. And you did it.
He did it.
You did it. I mean, not that my astonishment isn't towards you and your ability, but just the sheer enormity of the task. And that you not that I'm questioning your abilities or anything like that, but it was just, you did it. And you did it well, and it's something that I can stand behind, and I like that it's like a working document. We've rolled up our like you can see all of us has contributed something, that it's something to work forward, that we're working on, where we can look forward to. Yeah, so I just want to say congratulations. I am proud to stand behind this. I look forward to to working with this. I know we've got a lot more to do, but good job. Yep, it's like great leadership. We still have a lot to do, but wow, it's nice.
Yes,
It's nice to see something good and positive moving forward. So I'd like to, extend my congratulations and whatever I can do to help to keep that forward momentum.
This energy, yes.
Yep, so and with that being said, let's keep that forward momentum and get this meeting done.
Thank you. Any more discussions?
I'm glad to see that the strategic plan is complete as well. I know you put a lot of work into it, and you listen to what we had to say and what the community had to say. And I'm glad to see that Holmes Middle School is going to get, Holmes, for the lack of the complete term, the name of the school, will be getting a parking lot because coincidentally, somebody posted on Facebook today that parking lot need to be done.
Yeah, they did.
You saw did anybody see that post
I did
other
see
than me?
that, Sister Booth.
Well,
Yeah.
hopefully, that's our next action item, so hopefully we
Okay.
can get a yes on that one too.
Let's just keep
I
it
will
moving.
answer that post.
Bunch of parking lots in here.
Yes,
See,
next.
it's in writing.
Yeah.
So, yes, congratulations.
Thank you. It wasn't just me, it was this team.
Team, yes.
Good.
It's emotional
Ms. Murphy.
because I take this very serious. And it's been a long time coming. And so to hear you as our board allow us to move this forward, you haven't voted yet. But for you to do that, for you to say the words openly in this meeting, Pastor, Laura, and all of you, means the world. And I feel like we've accomplished something.
Yes.
That's right, yeah,
So I'm done.
good.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion to move resolution number 21.36, authorization to implement the Flint.
37.
What am I?
21.37.
Yeah.
You said
21.
36 or something.
I said, okay. Seeing no further discussion, the motion to move resolution 21.37, authorization to implement the Flint Community School 2022 to 2027 strategic plan to the regular meeting for adoption will be conducted by a roll call vote. As I call your name, please say yes or no. Trustee Green is absent. Trustee Gibbert?
Yes,
Vice President McIntyre is absent. Assistant Secretary Treasurer Del Maroney.
Yes.
Secretary Booth.
Yes.
Treasurer McIntyre.
Yes.
And myself is a yes. Yes. Two absent.
Finally.
Yes.
you know you gotta bring food tomorrow,
Oh, you got to bring
No,
food.
I'm just teasing.
I'll bring you anything you want after that.
Please continue, Mr. Jones.
I seek a motion and a second from the board to move Resolution 21.31, Architectural Services, to the regular meeting on June 15th for adoption.
So moved.
Support.
It has been properly moved and second. Is there any discussions? Is there any discussion?
This,
Trustee Del Maroney.
this is for all ESSER funding.
Yes, this is for us to, well, when we say that, we do understand that parking lots can't be paid through ESSER, so it will be, we will be trying to use some of the general fund after we receive supplanted funds, thank you, to take care of these items that I have emailed to you all and put in the packet. This gets us started because we can come back to the table and say, hey, let's talk about doing this instead of this. But this gets us started. It puts us on a good path.
Because there was some discussion at one time, wasn't there, about doing only one school and than having to come back for separate bids for other schools as we move forward?
So that's why we brought the construction team forward to speak to you the other week. We did not bring that to you today because we wanted to get the architect passed, and then we'll bring that to you in July to bring on that construction team so that they will handle the general contracting RFPs for us. So that will be next.
Right.
Is there any more discussion? Seeing no further discussion, the motion to move resolution, hold on, I'm on the wrong page.
21,
2131.
21.38,
31.
oh yeah, 21.31, architecture service to the regular meeting on June the 15th for adoption.
So move.
Oh, we did that. Well, something is duplicate, oh, we on the
We
vote.
did, didn't we? Yeah.
Oh, there's an error here, okay. The motion to move 21.31 architect service to the regular meeting will be done by roll call vote.
Yes.
As I call your name, please say yes or no. Trustee Green is absent. Trustee Gibbert?
Yes.
Vice President McIntyre is absent. Assistant Secretary Treasurer Dale Maroney.
Yes.
Secretary Booth.
Yes.
Treasurer McIntyre.
Yes.
Myself, yes. 5 yes.
I give y'all that one too.
Please continue, Mr. Jones.
All right, this is the last one, and I want to say before I talk to you about this, we are not in any issues with lateness. We did the RFP process with this item, but we do not feel like what came back to us was efficient enough for us to move forward with changing our PR service. So we want to put out a new RFP, but we still need to roll throughout the summer, and we want to give ourselves an extension so that we can do another RFP. So I seek a motion and a second from the board to move Resolution 21.38, authorization to extend public relations services contract agreement to the regular board meeting on June 15th for adoption.
So moved.
Support.
It has been properly moved and second. Is there any discussions?
This is the same company that currently does our website,
Correct.
which the last time I looked had Superintendent Jones down as Assistant Superintendent.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's been changed, but I'm just pointing that out.
Sure. And I'll say this, Mr. Del Moroni, what we have historically had is someone that was from the district working with this group, but we haven't had that, I would say, for the last, until I came and started trying to get them to do our forms better. They got better at that, I would say, but there's mistakes, there's things we need to fix. However, the RFPs we put out, we had $500,000 come back for PR services. We are currently paying about $50,000 a year. We can't pay, just under 100, thank you. But we can't pay $500,000 for PR services at this time. And so that's why we want to go out for another RFP and give other companies an opportunity to bid in this process. Yes, there are things we need to fix, but we still want to keep moving throughout the summer to make things happen as it pertains to getting ready for school as well. So yes, I hear you.
And I just want to point out, I'm not always, some will take what I say as a connotation of that I'm being negative, but I'm of the mindset of looking at things, how can we improve things and make them better?
Sure.
So many of the good things that are going on in a district, in a business, in our community, they take care of themselves. I mean, they've been doing great work and everything else, but it's how can we make it better? The stuff that is bad, how can we make it better? I ask students when they say, well, you know, I just took a test and I got 97%. and they say, I missed 3 questions out of 100 or whatever it may be. I says, well, gee, that's pretty good, 97%. But what I want to know is, what did you get wrong? Why did you get it wrong? Have you learned from the test? Because you know what you know. You know that 97%. I want you to learn that 3% that you missed. So, always looking for improvement. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any more discussion?
So I'm in agreement that Lambert's got to go.
Amen.
Like, nobody wants them. And to me, we're paying almost $10,000 a month for what? They're not, I really don't know what they're doing. But I hear you, I respect what you're asking. You're saying we just need this to, it's not perfect. In fact, it's less than perfect. It's abysmal, but we've got to have something to tide us over. So I mean, I hear that request. I'm hoping that we can find somebody. Yeah, I agree that, you know, $500,000, $500,000 is crazy. But also paying almost $100,000 for nothing is crazy too. So I'm here to support you. So I will vote yes if that's what you want, even though I can't stand Lambert, and they really should be ashamed of themselves for what they're doing. But, you know, it is what it is. I wish we could take the $9,500 a month and just give it to some local 20-something. I mean, someone
Support.
in the area who could
Yeah.
just take $10,000 a month and just go with it and do TikToks and
Hopefully we
update
can
our
get
web.
that done.
I mean, shoot, we could get so much for $10,000 a month, you know, just from some local person, you know. I'm just, you know, meeting's going too long, but that's where I'm at. So I'll support it if that's what you want, but those are my hesitations.
We will put out the RFP.
Thank you, Madam President. I was just going to say, Superintendent Jones, is that you go on the, I mean, they deal with the website, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so you go, yeah, some of the stuff, you go on there and you hit the link and you want to, such as, now one day they brought up half of part of Neola was coming up, and then the other half didn't come up. And then it just disappeared, and I'm looking at my iPad, and I got 100% battery, so I'm trying to, and then it's got Safari page in error, or something like that. And the page is in error, so, and I'm saying to myself, who is this Lambert? And it goes back to what Sister Laura said, and I mean, so I don't know a lot about it. I just believe that what you put in is what you get out, and if you got poor putting in, you get poor coming out. And that's what it seems like that's happening here, is that they see the district, and like you said, you need that extension, you need the time, and yet we're looking to get an RFP to where we can get someone that's really gonna put the district and the board and our students and everybody involved in the Flint Community School District out front and put the best up there. And that's where my problem is that, and I always think about when people take these pictures that they do and TikTok or whatever. I think my wife calls them glam shots or something. I don't know. I figured you look at my face, it ought to be glamorous enough for you. But anyway, and when you go on there, you know, a lot of that, like you said, it's still got you interim, and it's got, it doesn't, I don't even know if it has Madam President's thing, right? I'm not sure. It's just, you know, and then it has a picture of me one day. I go on there, it's got one picture in the blue jacket, and then it's got me going this way, and the next time I go and look, it's got me going that way. So
Now that might be internet connection.
okay.
Yeah,
okay.
that
Okay.
sounds like more internet connection than
Okay.
actually what's on the site. But neither here nor there. We're definitely going to
yeah.
put the RFP back out and hopefully we can, we can move this forward and get this right.
Mr. Jones,
Thank you.
I want to just say something. Mr. Jones, do you need the board, to do any advertising, do we need board approval to get some advertising on that position, or what do you think?
So we had tabled the marketing. We had
Yes, we
tabled the
did.
marketing
Yeah.
and some other things that came up, and I just didn't want to keep beating the board down with the marketing. But we do need to do some marketing. I didn't bring it because of our agenda, and we had tabled it. But I would love for what I sent to you to be considered for the marketing. And that's not just for the summer. That will lead us a couple of months into the school year, which families are still looking for schools. So what I sent you, I could bring that forward. I just was trying not to bog the board down with so many things at one time. But yes, we do need that marketing. We need to get some marketing going, and that's outside, though, of this actual action item.
Yeah.
It's outside of that action item. So if it pleases the board for me to bring that action item at some point, if you want it tomorrow or if you want it
No.
next week, you let me know.
Tomorrow.
Sooner,
Okay.
yeah.
I make a motion to bring the marketing item forward for tomorrow's agenda for the second half of the COW, so that we can bring it
Madam
forward to the
President,
meeting.
Did you recognize?
Yeah, I did, I just
Okay.
didn't call her name.
Support.
Yeah. Second.
Are we in the middle of a motion?
Yeah, she,
Yeah,
I
she
just
just
made it.
made it. Just what she said.
she made a motion to bring the marketing stuff on the agenda for tonight.
Oh, are we?
Right, but I'm saying we're in the middle of a motion.
Oh, we didn't, hold on, we sure
I
are.
thought
We
we
was in
did that.
discussion on 21.38. I didn't do a
We
roll.
didn't end discussion.
I didn't end.
we didn't?
No,
ended-
sir.
Just a
Chris
little-
Demaroni, do you want to finish
withdraw.
discussion, then we'll get to your motion.
Okay.
Miss. We can hear you.
Hello.
Battery's going. Can you hear me? No.
No.
Yeah, his battery's fried.
Yeah, okay. So on 2138, I understand the request for a proposal, but I think this is a perfect opportunity to bring something back in under house. So, we're talking $114,000 a year, and I think we can find someone, quite possibly out of college, who would do this, including benefits, for much less than that.
So we've done that study, and the work is, one person will not be able to complete all of the work that we need on a daily basis. We go from NBC to Channel 12 to writing letters for parents. It's a team of work. And so when letters are written, Lambert gets together. I've just noticed how they work. And most of the folks that are on the RFP do it as a team, because you find errors and you find, things are not done properly, or one team is working on tomorrow's event, another team is working on another event, and that's how all of these things are getting done. But if one person was doing all of this work, there would be things backed up that would not get done in an appropriate manner. So we did do that study, and that's what came back, and that's why we had to put it out for an RFP, because it's just too much work for one person. And that's why there's firms out there doing this work.
Okay, and they're able to scale it then.
I didn't hear you, I'm sorry. It's on, I heard you.
Okay, so they're able to scale it then, the outside firms. They'll have multiple departments working on the same
Several
thing,
different things, yes.
Okay. And the only problem I see going forward is we get closer to the end of the 6 months. Is there anything in their contract that says they need to provide any training or knowledge so that there's a seamless flow of the new company, if there is one, a new company coming in?
No, we haven't discussed that. Thanks, Mr. Del Moroni. I think we need to have a discussion of that. I don't think that that's out of the purview of the work that we do with Lambert, we can discuss that.
Okay.
We can discuss, I don't think that's gonna be hard to turn over information when we get to that point. But we're trying to put that RFP out within the next couple of months, right? So that we're not waiting until
Yeah.
that 6 month.
I think we can do that. I believe it can be done. Can this be, I know we got June 30th coming up, but can this be held up in the sense maybe we table it to talk to them in the sense of, hey, we're going to renew the contract, but we want this included in the event we don't extend it to you beyond January 1st of next year, to where you're training or whatever needs, maybe there is no training. Maybe another firm can just come in and pick it up and roll with it.
Well, I want you to keep in mind this too. I mean, Lambert has the opportunity to go out for this RFP. I want you to keep this in mind.
Sure.
And they could possibly be the best that we have to offer this board. I'm putting it out there, all right? And because we're talking other companies that's saying $500,000. I know it's twisting some of y'all's blood right now, but just understand that we can do that, but I just don't want to, it's not fair in the RFP if you don't give a person a chance.
Sure.
So we have to give their firm a chance if they decide to go out for this RFP. We can't just knock them out before we even do the RFP. It's just not appropriate, and it's not the way you do an RFP. So I would have to talk to them about what you asked, because that's almost saying we're going to be switching over to someone
Terminate.
else. Yes. All right, Board President, I'll finish.
Seeing there's no further discussion, the motion to move resolution 21.38, authorization to extend public relations service contract agreement to the regular meeting for adoption will be conducted by a roll call vote. As I call your name, please say yes or no. As I call your name, please say yes or no. Sorry. Trustee Green is absent. Trustee Gilbert,
Yes.
Vice President McIntosh is absent. Assistant Secretary Treasurer Del Maroney,
Yes.
Secretary Booth,
Yes.
Treasurer McIntyre stepped out. Myself, President McNeil is a yes, so we have 4 yes.
Thank you, Board President. That's it?
I think that's gonna
That's
be
it?
it. At this point, we could take any remarks or comments. Do any board member have any comments before we adjourn? I do have an announcement as well.
I feel that this was a very productive meeting, and it went pretty swiftly.
And we almost out of here before 10. Yeah. Any more comments? If not, I would like to make, say just a couple of things. My condolence goes out to the family. The 2 children, they went to Door Rider. They got burned up in the house. And the mom. And hopefully we as a board, as a district, can do something to ease that pain, help out. And I leave that up to, the administration.
Sure. Let me tell you where we are.
Yes,
Okay, so we've been very slow to speak because this family, it was 7. There's 7 family members. 1 made it out the house. The young man, he jumped. And he was in the hospital. I talked to the auntie. He's doing better. He will recover, per the auntie. And I just want to say that the principal, a couple of the workers at the school, Mr. Stewart, Miss Kleeman, myself, we all went to the site. We all were, with the teachers. Of course, this was a hit to several teachers in Doyle Ryder. So we're on top of it. We even did our due diligence as a community person and offered our church to support this family, and they've accepted that so that they can have the funerals at the church. It is a horrific situation. We did send letters home to the families of our Doyle Writer Scholars. There was social workers at the school to support the staff. We met with the teachers that lost the children. And so I would say that Flint Community Schools is on top of this, and we're doing all we can to support. I also received phone calls from some of our partners who's willing to support these families as well, this family, and monetary or even food to support. So we are doing our due diligence, and Board President, we'll keep you updated.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing that, I have one more thing I do want to bring to the board that's going to come to you tomorrow. We have a situation. Anytime that there's an assault and there's a liability expense, we're going to bring a resolution or something to the board that Laura McIntyre attorney expense have to be paid. She doesn't have to go through litigation and go to court to make the board pay for it because it happened on the board property. And rather than do that, I think you heard the judge has said something that she have to have a court attorney, and we would be bringing that forth tomorrow, getting approval that she have to have an attorney. She was assaulted on the district property, and so we're going to be bringing that forth, that we have her pay that. This attorney been working for her, and we got to get her paid, this attorney, because she cannot be in court without any representation, and she was assaulted. So I just want to let you know I don't like doing surprises. We've got a legal advice on that and what we should do for that next. If there's nothing else, no other comments, we have our second board meeting tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. here at ALA. I declare the Board of Committee of the whole meeting adjourned. Good night.